ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك ولعظيم سلطانك. سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. فلك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين، وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين، وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين، وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين، وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها أنت خير الوارثين. نويت تعلم التعليم وتذكر التذكير، نفع انتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة، والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. قال إمام شمس الدين أبو الفتح أبو عبد الله محمد بن أحمد بن سيد الناس يعمري ربعي رضي الله تعالى عنه ونفعنا به وبكم في الدارين آمين، في كتابه نور العيون في تلخيص سيرة الأمين المأمون صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، في باب ذكر رسله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم إلى الملوك. عمرو بن أمية رضي الله تعالى عنه للنجاشي ملك الحبشة، واسمه أصحم وهو عطيته، فوضع كتاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على عينيه، ونزل عن سريره وجلس على الأرض، وأسلم ومات في حياة النبي صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم في سنة 9، فصلى عليه صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. ودحية بن خليفة الكلبي رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى ملك الروم قيصر وهو هرقل، فثبت عنده نبوة النبي صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم، وهم بالإسلام فلم توافقه الروم فخافه على ملكه فأمسك. وعبد الله بن حذافة السهمي رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى كسرى ملك فارس لعنه الله، ومزق الكتاب فقال صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم: مزق الله ملكه كل ممزق. وحاتم بن أبي بلتعة رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى المقوقس فقارب الإسلام وأهدى للنبي صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم مارية وشيرين والبغلة الشهباء جلد وقيلة و1000 دينار وأثوابا 20 من الخز. وعمر بن العاص رضي الله تعالى عنه رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى جيفر وعبد بن نيل جلند ملكي عمان، فأسلم وخليا بين عمرو وبين صدقة والحكم فيما بينهم، فلم يزل حتى توفي النبي صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. وصليت بن عمرو العامري رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى حوذة بن علي صاحب اليمامة واكرمه، وبعث إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم: ما أحسن ما تدعو إليه وأجمله، وأنا خطيب قومي وشاعرهم، فاجعل لي بعض الأمر. فأبى عليه الصلاة والسلام ولم يسلم حوضه. وشجاع بن وهب الأسدي رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى الحارث ابن أبي الشمير الغساني ملك البلقاء من الشام، فرمى بالكتاب وقال: أنا سائر إليه، فمنعه قيصر. ومهاجر بن أبي أمية المخزومي رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى الحارث الحميري إلى اليمن. والعلاء بن الحضرمي رضي الله تعالى عنه إلى المنذر ابن ساواء ملك البحرين فأسلم. وأبو موسى الأشعري بعثه إلى اليمن ومعه معاذ بن جبل رضي الله تعالى عنهما، فأسلم عامة أهل اليمن وملوكهم من غير قتال. The Imam rahimahullah ta'ala, we enter into the 6th year of the life of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama. And this 6th year is the year of Hudaybiyah. It's the year when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama, he goes into a covenant and a contract with Quraysh. And for all intent and purposes, that puts aside all hostilities between Mecca and between Medina to Munawwara, between the Quraysh and between the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And what is ushered in now is the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam as the messenger to all of the world, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, when they look at the actual life and times of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this 23-year period, they can divide it into different stages. If we want, Bunya al-Islam wa ala khamsin, we can take it back to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam being 38 years of age. And so when the question is asked, is the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, prior to the descent of Gabriel at Hira, what was the degree, the state of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in terms of him being the outward uswa and the exemplar that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent for all creatures? And so they say at 38 years of age that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is the stage of wilaya. And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is at a stage of sainthood. What we mean demonstrative, that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam demonstrates sainthood and sanctity for those people who want to approach the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and realize the potential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed within them. 40 years of age, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from a wali, sara nabi. He becomes a prophet now, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And the nature of nubuwwah is a very inward reality, and it's a very private and solitary reality, nubuwwah. The nature of the prophets, they have a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and not a relationship with the creation of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala Azamatuh. From the prophets are very, very silent beings, and they're not under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to convey the import of the law. Okay? يعني رجل أوحي إليه بشرع ولم يؤمر بتبليغه. The nature of nubuwwah is it's masculine, a man who has a law revealed unto him, ولم يؤمر بتبليغه, but there's no commandment whatsoever to convey the import of that law. Okay? Illa, save that they must convey to their people that they are prophets. That's it, كي يحترم, so that they're afforded the proper respect at 40 years of age. Okay, but what's noticeable, they have no relationship with their people in terms of conveyance of the law in and of itself. It's what you call nubuwwah. It's what you call prophecy. And for our Prophet ﷺ, that was attained at the age of 40, ﷺ, outwardly. Inwardly, it's the narrative of the universe. It's the narrative that existed prior to the universe in and of itself. The nubuwwah or the prophecy of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That relationship with creation, it begins with risala. إِذَا أُمِرَ بِتَبْلِيغِهِ صَارَ الرَّسُولَ. And so now when they're commanded now to convey the import of the law by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now they become messengers. And for our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, although there are differences, as inshallah ta'ala, you'll be well aware, as is the nature of seerah, the multiple and variant opinions that the Imams and the biographers hold with regards to the varying stages inside of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. What dominates is at 43 years of age. So when the Rasul ﷺ becomes 43 years of age, Sara Rasula. Now the Messenger of Allah ﷺ becomes a messenger, and now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَانْظُرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, warn your tribe, your near relatives, يَا أَيُّهَا الْمُدَّثِّرْ قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ. Oh, the one who's wrapped inside of the garment, arise and warn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. And as for the blessing of your Lord, which is risala, hadith, then proclaim it among society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sahbihi wa sallam inside of the varying verses. Remember, those three stages are the stage of wilaya, the stage of nubuwwah, and the stage of risala. It's on that basis we can understand the period that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is inside of Mecca for. I.e., is the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of Mecca for 10 years, as we find a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim and others. Or is the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of Mecca for 13 years, which is what dominates. Or is the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inside of Mecca for 15 years, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. 10 years, bir risala. 10 years, and with risala, he's a messenger. 13 years, bin nubuwwah, with prophecy. He's inside of Mecca. 15 years, bil wilaya, with wilaya, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And so then you bear this in mind. Say that when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam stands upon earth now, at 43 years of age as a messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. As you've learned, these are now themes of Mecca. And so themes of Mecca are Tawheed. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he's teaching Tawheed, calling to Tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa ilahukum ilahun wahid. That your God, your Lord is one Lord, your God is one God. They're the teachings of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Secondly, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, now he's calling also to Risala. Risala. Yani, inni Rasulullahi ilaykum jami'an. Ya ayyuhan nas, inni Rasulullahi ilaykum jami'an. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala records for us inside of his book. And when you hear verses, Ya ayyuhan nas, the verse Ya ayyuhan nas is the address of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Mecca. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, the address of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Medina. As well, Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inni Rasulullahi ilaykum jami'an. O humanity, I am the messenger of God unto you in your entirety. That there is a Meccan khitab of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And likewise, we also heard the issue of Makarim al-Akhlaq, the third in this trivium of teachings of Mecca and what's called the Meccan crucible, that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is also going to teach Makarim al-Akhlaq, the traits that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam came with in a perfect way, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Hakadha Mecca. Remember what is noticeable, and it's very, very important as we move on to his ambassadors and his emperors, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the da'wah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the da'wah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has no outward martial component. There's no outward martial component whatsoever. That the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has not yet unsheathed the sword, and neither of any of his companions radiallahu anhum wardahum. Okay? Regardless of what occurs inside of Mecca, in that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum are killed, in that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is not just verbally abused, but he's also physically abused. Likewise also the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum verbally and physically abused. Violence is the order of the day inside of Mecca, which is one of the meanings of Jahiliyyah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in the hukmul jahiliyyati tabghun, the hukmul jahiliyyati yabghun. The hukmul jahiliyyah, the rule, the reign of Jahiliyyah, the reign of ignorance, is a reign of violence, violence, a very extreme violence. And whenever we speak in terms of our history, the history of Arabia prior to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, there's a term the Imams are going to employ, which is what's called Ayyam al-Arab. It's called the days of the Arabs, Ayyam al-Arab. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants a shift of perspectives from Ayyam al-Arab to Ayyam Allah, to the days of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Dhakirhum bi ayyamillah. Remind them of Ayyamillah, of the days of Allah, not of the days of the Arabs. What are the days of the Arabs? Violence. Whenever you hear that term, Ayyam al-Arab, it means the violence of the Arabs inside of Jahiliyyah. And that is obviously one of the most precise ways, although people say the age of ignorance, that ignorance had a manifestation and an objective, which was violence without reason, violence without cause, okay, unrestricted violence. And that violence, now the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that violence, now his companions, radiallahu anhum wardahum, they become the butt and the object of that violence. Okay, and so the Rasul physically abused, violence perpetrated against the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His people, radiallahu anhu, were around the Sahaba, violence against him. Yesterday we heard about the violence perpetrated against the likes of whom? Of Sayyidina Bilal, the violence that was perpetrated against the likes of the mother of Bilal, Sayyidina Hamama, violence perpetrated against Sayyidina Khabab ibn al-Rat. We heard violence we've heard before against the likes of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, violence against the likes of whom? Sayyidina Abu Dharr al-Khifari. Put unconsciously, they put unconscious to the point that they're left for dead, as we say inside the English language. When the violence reaches a point, then the Rasul sends the overwhelming majority of companions. It's been about 90% of the companions are uplifted from Arabia, and they're now going to be sent to Abyssinia. And they're going to remain in Abyssinia until the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam manifests a Khaybar. So beyond the point in which we're in now. Okay, Hakada Mecca, there's no martial component, regardless of what is occurring to the believers themselves. And remember, that's difficult for them. Remember, the Quraysh are violent, but those who surround the Prophet ﷺ as believers, they're Quraysh. Don't forget, it's Quraysh who are becoming Muslim around the Rasul ﷺ primarily. meaning they also know the art of violence. But religion teaches them to restrain their hands, okay? Because violence cannot be for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cannot. And for violence to be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that needs a very purified, sanctified, and extremely disciplined soul. Extremely disciplined soul. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the Sunan of Abu Dawood, when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is asked, الرجل يقاتل, that a man fights, للعصبية, يعني he fights due to partisanship. He fights due to nationality, his people. He fights for reasons of vengeance, which is a primary reason inside of what? Hamiyatul Jahiliyyah, as Allah Ta'ala called the Hamiyya, the vengeance of Jahiliyyah, the rage of Jahiliyyah. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, وَمَنْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, which one of them fights in the way of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? Because that's the only reason man knows why to fight. The causative reason why they engage in war and violence. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam now brings a very different definition. It's the one yuqatil litakuna kalimatullahi al-ulya. It's the one who fights in order for the word of God to be superior and utmost. Fahuwa fi sabilillah. That is the one who's in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, that very difficult. That needs an extremely disciplined soul. Extremely disciplined. Extremely disciplined. And the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, they're going to tell us 13 years of Mecca is in order for the souls of the companions to be disciplined. And the greatest way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disciplines their souls is Allah ta'ala unleashes wanton violence upon them and tells them to restrain. Now, which one of them is able to restrain? Now, one of the greatest ways it's captured, you see, is maybe in two incidences of two people who are very beloved to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We mentioned the tradition of saying Usama ibn Zayd, rahimahullah ta'ala. Where saying Usama ibn Zayd, he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he tells the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib and Sayyidina Abbas ala al-bab, that they're at the door, Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Abbas. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, do you know what they want? Sayyidina Usama says, Allah and His Messenger knows best. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, I certainly know exactly what they want. Allow them to enter. And so Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Abbas enter, and then thereby they ask the Prophet ﷺ, Man ahabba nasi ilayk, who is the most beloved person to you? Hakada the sha'n always of higher people is love and law. Hakada the conversation always revolves around love and law, as we've seen in Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal with the Mal al-A'la. And so now they're speaking about love, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, about love, Sayyidina Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib. What love? The only love that has weight upon the scales with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the weight of His beloved sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Man ahabba nasi ilayk, who is the most beloved person to you? And then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the most beloved person to me and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Usama ibn Zayd. Is Usama. And so saying Ali, well, no, after Usama then, who next? Who next after Usama? And so the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says Ali. And so Sayyidina Abbas, he said, okay, you're going to love them over your very own uncle, he says to the Prophet ﷺ, and he's speaking about Ali in particular. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, Ali migrated before you. And he's Muhammadani qabalak before you. The Prophet ﷺ says. So let's take a glimpse of Sayyidina Ali and a glimpse of Sayyidina Usama radiallahu anhu wa rada. Rasul ﷺ sends Sayyidina Usama, who's a teenager. And he sends Usama, this is Medina, late Medina, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and it's one of the expeditions. Remember the Sariya is now the Rasul moving in a secret, silent, spiritual way, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He doesn't stand up on the battlefield physically, rather he's on the battlefield spiritually, but his companions are present. And so saying Usama radiallahu anhu warda, he's in that sortie, saying Usama, the expedition, and saying Usama unsheathes against an individual. Saying Usama radiallahu anhu is able to overcome the enemy combatant, and then the person that's saying Usama is about to strike him like the finishing blow, the man screams out, La ilaha illallah. He screams out, La ilaha illallah. And so saying Usama kills him. Saying Usama strikes him, gives him the finishing blow. Okay? And he's an enemy combatant. Usama sent by the Rasul sallallahu to go to battle, go to combat with such an individual. Saying Usama radiallahu anhu warda, with the sortie now, after returning victorious, they return back to Medina to Munawwara. And so saying Usama now, obviously, as soon as they return back, they've got to face off the Prophet ﷺ. Victorious or defeated, he was come straight to the Rasul ﷺ in Medina. And so Sayyidina Usama now heads for the Prophet ﷺ, and he says the Rasul ﷺ is sitting as he approaches the Prophet ﷺ. And the Rasul ﷺ is saying to Sayyidina Usama as he's approaching, and أشققت صدره. The Rasul, knowledge already reached the Rasul what has happened. أشققت صدره. And you split open his chest. Saying Usama, he says to the Rasul, Ya Rasulullah, قالها خوفا من السيف. I mean, the only reason he said that, fear of death. He feared the sword. That won't come in samim qalbihi. Like he wasn't saying ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. It's just machination that he's using. La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. I got to say in Usama, saying to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then the Rasul says, "Ashaqqaqata sadra." You split open his chest. Ashaqqaqata sadra. You split open his chest, and you open his chest, gaze into his heart, and you knew the reason why he was saying those terms. Yani those words, the words of the Shahada, Ashaqaqata Sadra. He said, the Rasul, you carried. He said, Ashaqaqata Sadra. He said, I got to the point, saying Usama radiallahu anhu warda, he said, I wish I wasn't even Muslim that day. I wish I wasn't even Muslim. And the Imam said, what does he mean, I wish I wasn't even Muslim? That I did the act as a disbeliever and then became Muslim thereafter, because wipes kullu ma qad salaf. It wipes everything that is what has gone before. Because he saw that as the gravest sin that he could ever do. That day, discipline. What does that mean? You draw a parallel to the action of Sayyidina Usama and the comment of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. If you're in combat, an enemy combatant says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, back off. You have to have the ability in that moment to back off, not to resheathe. And you are not commanded whatsoever to take the life of a person who says La ilaha illallah whatsoever. And you have no quote-unquote jurisdiction over their heart to know the reason why they say it, whether they say it in truth or whether they say it in falsehood. It needs a degree of discipline in the heat of the battle, in the heat of the battle. You look at a second, Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, and Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, again of those who's beloved as demonstrated, Sayyidina Ali, and Sayyidina Ali rahimahullah ta'ala now in combat with another individual. And again, this is difficult for Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, the great warrior. Until Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu is able now to fell him, to take him to the ground, take him down, and Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib wants to finish him blow. And now when Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib wants to finish him blow, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, like the man now, basaq, spits in the face of Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, spits in the face of Sayyidina Ali. Sure. Now you're looking at these opposites. Sayyidina Usama wants to kill, and the man says, La ilaha illallah. Sayyidina Usama kills. Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib wants to kill, and the man basaq spits in the face of Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib. What does Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib do? He just resheathes. He said he resheathes his sword and he goes back. And he says, stand. And so now they address Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib and they said, ow. And it was difficult. You were able to take him down, and then now the finishing blow to kill him, and then to make matters worse, he spits in your face. Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, in the beginning, I was fighting for Allah. When he spat in my face, it became personal. And we don't kill for personal motives. We don't kill for personal reasons. But in that moment, the discipline Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, rahimahullah ta'ala, has to have. I mean, this is war. War has ethics. War has ethics. And when the Rasul hadith are mutawatira, that when a person goes to battle, you can't kill the infirm, you can't kill the old, you can't kill the female, you can't kill the child, you can't animals, you can't cut down trees and destroy trees, destroy vegetation. Shuf yari, hadith mutawatira. You disbelieve in the hadith, you disbelieve in Allah Ta'ala and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The ethics of war are fine. And they for people who are disciplined upon Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Look at the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Battle of Uhud. When the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam brings the sword, he brings forth the sword, the Battle of Uhud Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Man yakhudh as-sayf bil haqq. Who takes the sword now in truth? Who will do justice to the sword? The Prophet ﷺ says. Sahaba know best not to ask. Sure, if this is religion, you ask, you're not going to be given. You wait to be chosen. Okay? And so they remain silent, radiallahu anhu. Everybody wants the sword from the Rasul ﷺ because it's shahada. That's a testimony of the Rasul ﷺ from the companion. And so the Rasul ﷺ calls forth saying Abu Dujana. Abu Dujana, Simar Kibir Kharasha. Summons Abu Dujana to come forth. And so before giving the sword to Abu Dujana asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ma huwa haqqu sayf ya Rasulullah. Shuf. And that's amana. Not just take the sword of the Rasul giving me a sword. He wants to know whether he can do justice to the sword as the Rasul ﷺ is what is declaring. And of course he can. Otherwise the Rasul ﷺ would have summoned him. But look at the amana, the contract he wants with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And ma huwa haqq al-sayf. What's the right of the sayf? The sword. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that you fight with the sayf until you are killed beneath it. You fight with the sword until that very sword, you die beneath it. Like you sign on the dotted line, quote unquote. You sign on the dotted line with Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That you go into the barzakh as a martyr for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Dujana takes the sayf. He takes the sword. And he's going to die beneath the sword. Yamama, the battle of the garden. And that's where he's going to die, saying Abu Dujana rahimahullah ta'ala. Say that now when he enters into battle now, he has his imama, he has a red turban tied to his head, which becomes known as imamatul maut. It becomes known as the turban of death, the turban of whom saying Abu Dujana rahimahullah ta'ala. We spoke about another of the greatest people ever, Ibn Safiya. The son of Safiya, Sayyidina Zubayr ibn Awam rahimahullah ta'ala. And so Sayyidina Zubayr, mashallah ta'ala, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam will later declare after Uhud that today was the day of whom? Of Zubayr. Uhud is the day of Zubayr. I think it really sort of, maybe in a picturesque moment, so you get a sense of the age of Medina to Munawwara, with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is in the house of Sayyidina Fatima Zahra with Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib takes his sword, and then he gives his sword to Sayyidina Fatima Zahra. And he wants Sayyidina Fatima Zahra now to clean the sword, cleanse the sword. Sword drenched in blood. And Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, see that sword did damage today. That sword was just today of the wrecks of the disbelievers. That kind of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Sayyidina Fatima Zahra. And then the Rasul tempers Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib. And the Rasul says, what about the sword of Zubayr? Then what about the sword of Abu Dujana? The Rasul mentions. Don't think it's just your sword. That was a victorious sword today. But there were others amongst the ranks of the Sahaba, mashallah ta'ala, who were equally as skilled, mashallah ta'ala, and courageous inside of battle today, the Prophet ﷺ says. That Zubayr ibn Awam, when saying Abu Dujana gets the sword, Zubayr like, Abu Dujana? Zubayr ibn Awam like, Abu Dujana? It's like, Abu Dujana get the sword. How did Rasul give Abu Dujana the sword? So saying Zubayr rahimahullah ta'ala, no, he's not questioning the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he wants to see the wisdom. Because hakada, quote unquote, any person who's skilled in battle, they want to learn from those who potentially are more skilled than them inside the battle, especially as it relates to quote unquote the Maidan, the theater of ethics inside of war. And so thereby saying Zubayr says, in battle, I just begin to shadow Abu Dujana. I'm shadowing him. I want to see what's special about Abu Dujana. And he says, what I notice is every time the sword of Abu Dujana is lifted, somebody dies beneath the sword. Abu Dujana accomplished, rahimahullah ta'ala. Now, Abu Dujana, rahimahullah ta'ala, if you look at the courage and the bravery of Abu Dujana, it's one of the ways that he dies. It's probably part of the cause of his death, is when they can't get into when they can't break the garden of Musaylim al-Kadhab, and of Banu Hanifa there, and they closed the fortress, the garden closed of Musaylim al-Kadhab. Musaylim is a liar prophet, and the Sahaba can't break the fortress. Abu Dujana requests that they put him on the Manjaniq. Put me on the Manjaniq, on the catapult. Put me on the catapult and just fire him. Fire me over the wall. I land on the other side, I'll open the door. They put him on the Manjaniq, on the catapult, and they fire Abu Dujana. Fire him live, yani. Abu Dujana, whoa. Through the air, Abu Dujana, he lands, breaks his leg. I cannot show. Breaks his leg, radiallahu anhu warda. But he's able, Abu Dujana, to get there and to open the door. They mentioned two people upon that day. One, Sayyidina Abu Dujana, the second, Sayyidina Bara ibn Malik, the brother of Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, younger brother of Anas. Both of them are fired over the Manjaniq. And they both land, able to open up the fortress, the doors of the fortress. The Sahaba enter into the fortress now against Musaylimah and against whom? The Banu Hanifa there. And to show you the courage of the Sahaba, what the Sahaba do, they take the keys now, they open the door, they lock all the doors to the garden, lock them all. They take the keys, throw them over the wall. Ain't nobody leaving. Nobody's leaving this garden. And that garden becomes the garden of death. It's called the garden of death, yani, in and of itself. Nobody left, yani. Nobody left. Akkad and the Sahaba emerged victorious, radiallahu anhum. The greatest battle, the most difficult battle, they said the Sahaba ever engaged in, against Banu Hanifa. They mentioned, radiallahu ta'ala anhum wa ardahum. The Abu Dujana now inside of Uhud, Shuf, Sayyidina Zubayr, shadowing him. But every time you see somebody fall beneath the sword, Sayyidina Zubair, like, that ain't no thing, yani. For Zubair, like, that ain't no thing. They ain't no special about that, yani. You get it, whatever he can do, I can do better. I can see the mind of Sayyidina Zubair, it's the mind of the warrior, yani. The mind of the warrior mindset. Sure. Then Sayyidina Zubair, he says, sure, he hears insults being hailed at the Prophet ﷺ, hailed at the Rasul ﷺ. He hears the insult. And he said, what is amazing is that both Abu Dujana and Zubair, their heads simultaneously shift in the direction of where the insults are coming from. It's at the same time we both hear these insults being hailed at the Rasul ﷺ. Abu Dujana off, Abu Dujana is off in the direction of those who are hailing insults at the Prophet at the battlefield. He finds the combatant, Abu Dujana fells him immediately. Abu Dujana with the sword unsheathed to kill the person who's hailing insults at the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then Abu Dujana hears, ha! He's like, what that? Yeah, what the heck? Abu Dujana hears that noise. Zubayr is watching. Then Abu Dujana with his sword, he unveils the combatant, and it's a woman. It's woman, Hind bint Utbah. Hind bint Utbah. And he said, a woman? He sheathes the sword and heads off. And Zubayr says, now I know why you got the sword. I understood why you got the sword. The ethics in the midst of battle, the ability to discipline himself would go to the worst crime that a person can do. Yani. The worst crime is to insult the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. In the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as much as people may not understand, yani, not understand, in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is more severe. I'm talking about in Sharia, it is more severe to insult the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam than it is to insult God. In Sharia, in terms of the canon of law, to insult the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is grave, yani. It's grave in our law, encrypted inside of our law in and of itself. Sure, yani. Hakadar is people sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mecca was not a martial age. Then people were disciplined. Look, Allah لم يأن للذين آمنوا تخشع قلوبهم يعني لذكر الله وما نزل من الحق. Look at Allah Ta'ala in the chapter of iron, of steel, Surah Al-Hadid. Is it as it not come time for those who believe, for their hearts to fall into a state of dread and humility to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for that which has been revealed of truth? You see that verse that Allah Ta'ala reveals, that verse, telling the Sahaba, you ain't proved nothing yet. 13 years in Mecca with all that they went through, you ain't proved nothing yet. Now, the martial stage now is the price now to prove whether the heart is truly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or other than Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a price to pay for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the religion. So what is the price? What is the price you're ready to pay for proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What's the price you're ready to pay for proximity to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? What's the price you're ready to pay for that place for the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? He said, Ala inna bid'at Allah ghaliya. Is not the commodity of God expensive, priceless? Allah inna bid'at Allah hiya jannah. Is it not paradise? What's the price you're ready to pay? Sure. The price, I mean, it is a price. Yeah. It is a price. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum, in the money exchange of Nubuwah, every single one of them paid up. They all paid up, radiallahu anhum wardahum. Inna Allah ashtara min al-mu'minina anfusahum. Look at Allah Ta'ala. Verily Allah has bought, purchased from the believers what? Their lives. Allah has purchased their lives. For what, Ya Rab? بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. Paradise. For paradise. Fair exchange is no robbery. We wouldn't even call it a fair exchange. SubhanAllah. Your life, I'm giving up my life. It wasn't even yours in the first place. Life is for Him, Al-Hayy Al-Muhyi, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for us, khalas, it's just a loan for each and every single one of us. It's His, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the Rasul, as we mentioned in the Bukhari, لِلَّهِ مَا أَعْطَى وَاللَّهِ مَا أَخَاهُ. To Allah belongs whatever He gives. To Allah belongs whatever He takes. To Allah belongs whatever He gives. And to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belongs whatever He takes. That's why you have no right, no jurisdiction to quote or to pronounce judgment upon your life. None whatsoever. Don't take your own lives because it ain't yours. That life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's for Allah Jalla Jalala wa ta'ala. So now Medina ushers in a very, very different stage. It becomes a martial stage. The da'wah, by and large, is still towards the Arabs, and in particular Quraysh. The da'wah. Because it's going to be important. When Quraysh fall, everybody falls. That's Arabia, yani. And the da'wah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama is a very intelligent da'wah, yani. It's a very selective da'wah. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Prophet, sometimes they call like social intelligence. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has a profound understanding of how society works, of how it works, yani. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. It's like if you call a tribe, the chief matters, yani. The chief matters. You get the chief, you get the tribe. You don't get the chief, you don't get the tribe. That's ordinarily how it works inside of Arabia. And so the da'wah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, hakada. One, subhanallah, the Fakir read, and it was a Muslim sociologist, and so he had a work, and this was about sort of American motor industry. And quote to quote, they'd gone into Africa, and now they're trying to quote to sell their cars in Africa. So if they had told him, he spent a lot of money, quote unquote, Madison Avenue there, trying to advertise, quote unquote, inside of Africa, these new motor cars. Then they realized not a single car was being sold, not one. This is the advent of the motor industry. They weren't selling a single car, and they couldn't figure it out until, quote unquote, they were given the advice that society revolves around the chief of the tribe. You get the chief, you get the tribe. And so thereby what they started doing, they started, quote unquote, sending in all these cars as gifts to the chief of the tribe. Yeah. And then, they recorded that the chief didn't know how to drive, and he was totaling this car, and he had all his wives who were totaling that car. He was just smashing up all these cars because he didn't know how to drive. Yeah. Eventually, the chief learned how to drive, started driving, quote unquote, through town. Shuf. Now everybody started buying the car. Shuf. After they got the chief, they got what they called, quote unquote, they got the society. And that day, the Rasul clearly understood that inside of society, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, both Meccan society as well as inside of Medini society. Meccan society, when the da'wah of the Rasul himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is overwhelmingly to a'immatul kufr, to the leaders of society, overwhelmingly is to a'immatul kufr. That's part of the narrative of Abasa wa Tawalla if ja'ahu al-a'ma wa ma yudrika la'allahu yazakka. Saying Abdullah ibn Maktoum coming to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when he's given da'wah to a'immatul kufr, the leaders of Quraysh, okay? Because you get the leaders, you get society. And that's why nobody should ever understand that surah as a rebuke of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam whatsoever. With that, they're sanctioned by Allah. How can the Rasul sallallahu has been sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to call his people, and in the very act of calling his people, how could the Rasul ever be doing wrong? As some Muslims erroneously understood by Surah Al-Abas. Surah Al-Abas, likewise, Madinatul Munawwara. Look at Madinatul Munawwara, and look at the importance of saying Usayd ibn Hudayr, and the importance of saying Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh, and the importance of saying Sa'ad ibn Ubadah. When saying Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh becomes Muslim, the entire Aus becomes Muslim. When saying Sa'ad ibn Ubadah becomes Muslim, look, both of them become Muslim at the hands of one man, saying Mus'ab ibn Umayr. After that, done deal, the two tribes, Afwaja, they flow into Islam overnight, radiallahu anhum wa ardahum. Okay? And so, hakada the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, now we see the martial stage. When you take it from the individual to the level of society, Mecca. That's important. Look, Medina, Mahbat. The Rasul has established, quote unquote, statehood, quote unquote, inside of Medina to Munawwara. Yet, Arabia is at war with Medina. Okay, like 1 year prior to this, the entire Arabia is on the doorsteps of Medina in what becomes the Battle of Khandaq. 1 year prior to where we're at now, the 6th year after Hijra. And the statehood of Medina is evident. Medina illuminated, evident. But Medina, quote unquote, is not the chief of Arabia. Mecca is. And that's why 1 year after the liberation of Mecca, then you see the 40 plus delegations of the tribes of the Arabs all coming to the Rasul in Medina now, quote, to pay homage to the Prophet ﷺ. Like Mecca must fall first. That's why Hudaybiyah is a landmark moment. This is the 6th year now when the Rasul ﷺ now puts aside all hostilities with Mecca to Al-Mukarramah. In the landmark treaty that is known as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, from his migration all the way towards the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, that's what you would call the first martial stage. It's the first martial stage of his da'wah, where the word now is accompanied by the sword. But the sword is only unsheathed against the Arabs and against Quraysh in particular. You get the point, the holders of Mecca in particular. But now with Hudaybiyah, those swords are put aside now, against Quraysh in particular. And now the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, from now being the Rasul to the Arabs, is the Rasul to the Alamina. Now you see the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam now, the world stage now. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam addressing the emperors of the world, sending his ambassadors forth sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Remember the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at Hudaybiyah, when he's leaving Hudaybiyah, this shows you the importance, he's leaving Hudaybiyah. As we'll see, Abdullah ibn Hudhayfa al-Sahmi is sent from Hudaybiyah to Persia. Sure, it's already on the area. It's not like the Rasul leave Hudaybiyah, let's go to get back to Medina, let's think about what stage we take next. Abdullah Hudhayfa is already off, already off. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, now to summon whom? Khasros and Persia unto the way of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala. Again, introduction. It's going to help us sort of read, inshallah ta'ala. A lot of today we just got to read because we're trying to, inshallah ta'ala, finish over the last chapter by our last class in the Rabi al-Awwal. Let's go to Husn al-Khatim, inshallah ta'ala, which is Sunday night, inshallah ta'ala. So often, inshallah ta'ala, excuse the brevity or thereabouts, inshallah. Amr ibn Umayyah, radiallahu anhu, was sent to the Negus, the emperor of Abyssinia. His name was Ashama, meaning Atiyah. And so Ibn Sayyid al-Nas, masha'Allah. Then he begins with whom? Abyssinia. It's only not the case. But Ibn Sayyid al-Nas wants to begin with the best. The best, no doubt whatsoever, Ashama. And this is the greatest emperor of his age. Period. Full stop, not open for conversation, okay? He's the only one of the emperors who's going to embrace the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and embrace the religion. And as we said, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is going to call him Rajulun Salih. He's a righteous man. And the Rasul for the Sahaba calls him Akhukum. He calls him your brother. He's a brother of the Sahaba. And then he's so great that Allah Ta'ala will bring his body from Aksum in Abyssinia all the way to Medina to Munawwara and place it right there in the wall of the Qibla for the Prophet ﷺ. He's so great that the Rasul ﷺ, rather than just praying over him, the Rasul summons every single companion in Medina to Munawwara. وَيَسْتَفُونَ, and they all line up behind the Rasul ﷺ, أَرْبَعْ تَكْبِيرَات. And the Rasul ﷺ 4 takbirat. The riwayat 3 takbirat, meaning excluding takbirat al-ihram. 4 takbirat. The Rasul now prays over Ashama. Okay? And so the Prophet ﷺ sends Amr ibn Umayyah, al-Damri, radiallahu anhu, from Banu Damra. He sends him all the way to Abyssinia in order for 2 things. 1, to deliver the letter to the Najashi, to the Negus, which invites him to Islam, but also at the same time, for the Sahaba who are still there under the leadership of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anhum wardam, for all of them to come home now. Come home. It's time to come home to Medina to Munawwara, radiallahu anhum wa ardahum. That's saying Amr ibn Umayyah. And again, part of that narrative, we looked at it with the conversion of Amr ibn al-As, because he's going to be there at the same time. Right now, so we understand when it is the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Amr ibn Umayyah is in Abyssinia. When Amr ibn al-As arrives in Abyssinia, and the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is in Mecca doing Umrah al-Qadha, 7th year. This when all of this is taking place, i.e. the year after Hudaybiyah in and of itself. Okay, so Amr ibn Umayyah, the great companion, is going to be sent by the Prophet ﷺ to the Negus, the Najashi, the emperor of Abyssinia. His name is Ashama. Okay, that's in the language of the Abyssinians, which they say is Amharic, language of Amharic. He speaks Amharic. If you translate it to Arabic language, it means Atiyya, the gift. And this very, very special individual, Yuzar il-Yawm. This day, mashallah ta'ala, he is visited. His grave is visited. Now, teacher and guide Habib Umar, mashallah, visited him, and Qarib visited him in Abyssinia, mashallah ta'ala, the grave of the great Negus himself. Okay, this is the letter, and we put one of the letters, but you get the general gist for all of the letters that the Prophet ﷺ sent, which by and large are pretty similar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, from Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the messenger of God to the Negus, the emperor of Abyssinia. You are peace. Anta salam. You are peace. In front of you I praise God, the one other than whom there is no other deity, the King, the Holy, the source of peace, the grantor of security, the guardian. I bear witness that Jesus, the son of Mary, is the Spirit of God and his word, which he cast into the Virgin Mary, the beautiful and chaste one. She thereby fell pregnant with Jesus, whom he created from his spirit and his breath, subhanahu, just like he created Adam with his own hand. Verily I summon you unto God alone. He has no partners, and unto constant obedience unto him, and that you follow and believe in that which has come unto me. Verily I am the messenger of God, and I summon you and your armed forces unto God, mighty sublime is he. I have indeed conveyed and advised accordingly, so embrace my advice fully. Peace be upon those that follow guidance. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The best of all speech is that which, albeit succinct, although succinct, is extremely profound. Look at the Najashi. He immediately places the letter of the messenger of God right there on his forehead, on his eyes. It's a sign of utmost respect, mashallah ta'ala. And then he then descended from his throne, sat on the ground, and became Muslim in the presence of Ja'far radiallahu ta'ala anhu warḍah. Thereby he writes back to the Prophet ﷺ, in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, to Muhammad, the Messenger of God from the Negus Ashama, may the peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you, O Prophet of God, other than whom there is no other deity. To proceed, O Messenger of God, your letter has indeed reached me. With respect to what you mentioned about the affair of Jesus, by the Lord of heaven and earth, verily Jesus, the son of Mary, is nothing more than you have mentioned. Rather, he is just as you have mentioned. Look at his precision of words. We truly recognize that which you have been sent to us with, and we have kept your cousin and his companions close. In Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all those alongside, we've kept them close. And they've been treated, mashallah, tabarakallah, with the utmost of hospitality and respect. I hereby bear witness that you are the messenger of God, the truthful, the one in whom truth is vested. And I've taken allegiance with you, and I've just taken allegiance with your cousin, and embraced Islam upon his hands for the sake of God, the Lord of the world. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Hakad the letters, he died during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ in the 9th year after the migration, and the Messenger of God, as we said in the Hadith al-Bukhari, clear, the Rasul ﷺ prayed over him. Radiyallahu anhu, radu an. Dihya bin Khalifa al-Kalbi, radiyallahu anhu, was sent to the Emperor of Rome, Caesar, otherwise known as Heraclius. The prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ was affirmed by him, and he truly desired to become Muslim. However, the senators of Rome opposed him, so out of fear of them, he never did. It's Heraclius the first. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ sent saying Dihya bin Khalifa al-Kalbi. How can they make mention of the quote the appreciation of Europe and Rome in particular for external beauty? Quote, to this day, and you only speak about external beauty in terms of sight, it goes back to the Romans and the Italians. You want to speak about in terms of European, in terms of the Eurocentric mind. If you want to quote unquote speak about it in terms of what? In terms of sound, it returns back to the Romans and the Italians with that. You look at all of the quote unquote sensual, quote unquote manifestations of beauty, then it's as if it's the property of Rome and the Italians. To this very day, to this day. And so the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, due to their appreciation of this quote of sensual beauty, external beauty, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent in Dihya, who we learned is the most beautiful man facially after the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But don't worry, they'll appreciate Dihya radiallahu anhu. The commandment of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the means is to what? Go to the governor of Busra. Give the letter to the governor of Busra, instruct the governor of Busra to give the letter to Caesar. Okay? In the riwayah, that's what Sayyidina Dihya does. In another riwayah, Sayyidina Dihya, when he reaches Busra, Caesar is present at Busra. And Caesar now is heading towards a palace, and literally in the hadith, the red carpet is what is rolled out. And so Sayyidina Dihya takes the letter of the Rasul and throws it right in front of Caesar as he's walking, and then he just coughs. Sayyidina Dihya coughs. Attention, look what's in front of you. And so Caesar then picks up the letter and then sees the letter, and then he says, who threw the letter? And then Dihya now announces him, and when he sees Dihya, then we have a conversation, don't we? We have a conversation. So Dihya now accompanies Caesar to his palace inside of Busra, Thereafter, Caesar, the intelligence of Caesar, as it said, Caesar was an intelligent man, extremely intelligent. And so Caesar now, what he does, he now sends his guards into the Levant. Bring me people who are related to this man. Again, knowledge that Quraysh and the soldier in the mercantile union of Quraysh, that they go north in the summer months now. And so that the likely Quraysh will be present inside of the Levant. And so thereby, they find Abu Sufyan present, who now, and at this point, is the leader of Mecca. Abu Sufyan, Sakhr ibn Harb, he's inside of what? The Levant, traditions, he's in Jerusalem. He's arrived inside of Jerusalem, Abu Sufyan, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, with the entourage of Quraysh. And so thereby, they're summoned by Caesar to Caesar's palace. And for Abu Sufyan and Quraysh, they're being honored. And they go into, like as Rasul calls them, Azim al-Rum, the great one of Rome, the Caesar himself. And so they're being summoned now to Caesar. And so they enter into the palace of Caesar. In the riwayah, this is in Homs. The riwayah Jerusalem, another riwayah in Homs. Homs inside of modern-day Syria. And so now they enter into the palace of Caesar. And then thereby Caesar now asks a question. And he says, Caesar has a Turjuman, he has a translator. So he asks the question, which one of you is the closest person to this man in blood? Who's the closest person to this man in blood? So Abu Sufyan, the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, in its length, Abu Sufyan announces, I am. And so Caesar says, come forth. So Abu Sufyan comes forth. The riwayah, ajlasahu. He sits him right in front of him. And then the Caesar then commands everybody else to stay there behind. Everyone sit down, relax. I'm going to ask this man a series of questions. Caesar's saying, if the man lies, just motion. I can see years old, just motion. Just give me the slight indication that he's lying, with whatever answer he issues forth to me. Boom, saying Abu Sufyan, he said, if Caesar had not said that, I would have lied. If Caesar hadn't made that, I would have lied. I didn't want to be seen as a liar in front of the great one of Rome. And so thereby Caesar begins to ask a series of questions. He asks about, this man who claims prophecy. Has anybody in his line ever claimed it? Whatever he claims, is it a history of that? Somebody claiming to be a prophet? Abu Sufyan says, no history of that. And we're close, same line, both from Abd Manaf and the clan of Abd Manaf. Nobody ever claimed prophecy in his line. Caesar says, about that line there, is anybody in his line who's a king? Malik, they're a king, they were king. They had power, worldly power. He says, no, we don't have kings in our line. There's nobody in our line who's kings. Abu Sufyan, he asks, what about the line, his lineage in and of itself? The line, and what type of people is it? Is it aristocrats or ordinary people in society? So no, it's aristocrats, and it's a blood Quraysh, and the highest lineage he has, the highest lineage. Got it. He said, who follows him? I ask who follows him. Is it the aristocrats, the powerful in society, or the du'afa, the weak, the slaves, the outcasts, the downtrodden, the marginalized? Who follows him? He said, it's the slaves, it's the weak ones, they're the ones who follow. He's like, I've got that. He said, those who follow him, tell me, did you get less or did you get more? What happened? Yazid or Yankus? He said, no, they get more. They grow in numbers. He said, Tayyib, people, they entered into this faith of his. He said, does anybody leave his faith, sakhatan bidinihi? And they hate his religion. Did anybody, apostate, leave his religion? He says, no, nobody leaving his religion. He says, war. He's gone to war with him? Yes, he's gone to war with him. He said, what's the nature of the war? He says, Sijal, like Abu Sufyan, Sijal, like it's like a war of attrition. One day for him, one day for us. Abu Sufyan, so that's the nation. Caesar's, I've got it now. So Caesar says, sure. Caesar says, answer the questions that you've answered. Like if you're telling the truth as to those questions. Now I asked you about prophecy in his lineage. Because maybe, often people can regurgitate what their forefathers have said. And you're saying nobody's ever claimed prophecy inside of his lineage. Got it. He said, likewise also, you told me that he's got no kings in his line. Because maybe the man's after power. The lost kingdom of his forefathers. You said there's no kings in his forefathers. You told me about that. He's from the best of lineage. He said the nature of the prophets. The prophets always come forth with the highest lineages of their people. Look at it, like one by one. Like you asked me about like their numbers, do they increase or they decrease? You said increase, it's a sign of true faith. He said, I asked you there about when these people enter into religion, that do they ever leave his religion, apostate, out of hatred of his religion? And you said no. He said, وَكَذَلِكَ الْإِيمَانِ. That's the nature of faith. Either دَخَلَ الْقَلْبِ, he says, Caesar, when it enters the heart, then he says, وَيُخَالِطْ بِشَاشَةَ الْقَلْبِ. And it impacts the very, very depths of the human soul. There's no turning back. He said, there's no turning back whatsoever. I asked you about what? About you fighting, you fighting him. You're declaring war against him. Or he asked you about the followers of the prophets themselves. He said it was du'afa. He said, hakada. The followers of the prophets are the weak, the oppressed, the downtrodden, the slaves. They're the ones, the marginalized in society. They're the ones who follow the prophets. Hakada, Caesar says. I asked you about war. And he said it was sijal. He said it's the nature of the wars of prophecy. The wars, hakada, they're in the balance until al-aqibatu lil-anbiya, he says. The final affair is for the prophets themselves. They emerge ultimately victorious upon the battlefield, he says. He says, I acknowledge he was going to manifest, but I never thought he was going to manifest amongst yourselves. That's what he said. I acknowledge he was going to manifest, but I never thought he was going to manifest amongst yourselves. He says, and if it is correct what you're saying, it's close, that this man will rule, will control the land that is beneath the 2 feet upon which I stand now. He's going to control the Hekata, he says. And so now when Caesar says that, Hekata, they say, because the senators are present, then there's a commotion inside of the inner chamber where Abu Sufyan is. And so thereby Caesar motions, and Abu Sufyan and what the Quraysh are now ushered out. They're ushered out because there's a commotion amongst the senators in and of itself. Abu Sufyan, he says, when he's leaving, he said, it was at this point, his words, he's still speaking ill of the Rasul. He calls the Rasul Ibn Abi Kabsha, the son of a shepherd, the son of the owner of sheep. He said, I saw that the affair of Ibn Abi Kabsha, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, was now great. And he's being mentioned with Banu Asfar. That's it, Banu Asfar. The yellow people, that's what they call the Romans, the yellow people. The yellow people are now speaking about him. He says, we call yellow, we call them the olive-skinned people. I said the Latin people, the olive-skinned one. They're now mentioning the Prophet ﷺ. So Abu Sufyan are taken aback by that. And then you see the affair of Caesar, quote unquote, unfold, and the affair of Caesar unfold. And opinions, the Imam Caesar of those, is one of the reasons why Ibn Sayyid Nas has brought him second. Did he become Muslim and remain Muslim, but maybe hide his faith? Did he become Muslim and thereby apostate? Did he never become Muslim? Just khalas, thinking about it. All of those three, quote, are entertained by the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala. They're all entertained. What we do know, he treated Sayyidina Dihya with the utmost of respect. You understand that? What we do know, he even sends Sayyidina Dihya to Rome. So Dihya goes to Rome. And then Dihya takes the letter of the Prophet ﷺ to the Mustashir, the one who advises and takes advice, the High Council of Caesar himself. And in tradition that Caesar never disobeys his command. What we do know is the High Council of Caesar embraces the Prophet ﷺ. What we do know is the High Council of Caesar is thereby assassinated and killed in Rome for embracing the Rasul ﷺ. What we do know is that Caesar, likewise himself, he gathers the Senate in the inner chamber in Homs. And then he addresses the Senate, the senators of Rome. He addresses them. Like, what would you say? And he commands his guards, be upon the doors to the inner chamber. If I motion to you, jam them all shut, lock them all shut when I give you the motion. And so he gathers the senators and says, what do you say? If I say I'm upon the religion of this one who claims he's the final prophet. And as soon as Caesar says that, the senators all rise, and in tradition, like zebras, like zebras, they're all bolting towards the doors. So Caesar motions, and then now, they find all the doors are all bolted shut. Ruduhum, send every one of them back, every single one of them back. And so they're all now returned back to Caesar now, and Caesar says, I was just testing your loyalty to the cross. I wanted to see how firm you are upon the way, quote unquote, of the Son of Mary. I was testing your loyalty to the cross. Caesar. So that at that point, Caesar realizes, and that's what the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala wants, however, the senators of Rome opposed him, so out of fear of them, and the reason not fear of them, of mulk, is mulk, power. He was going to lose power. Caesar, that he never did. He did not become Muslim whatsoever, okay? That's the affair of Caesar, Heraclius. It's Heraclius the first in terms of history, Western history. The third of them we mentioned is Abdullah ibn Hudhayfa al-Sahmi, rahimahullah ta'ala, who sent to Khosrows. Khosrows, Caesar. That there is the what? Is the leader and the emperor of Persia. Look at Ibn Sayyidina's words, may God curse him. May God curse that one. Why? Yeshuf, Abdullah ibn Hudhayfa once again can't even enter into the court of the Persians. They won't even allow him. The way they look, the Arabs, they call the Arabs lizard eaters, them tramps, they come into our presence. I can used to go the Arabs. No. And so what Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Hudhayfa has to do, Prophet instructs him, go to the king of Bahrain. Go to the leader of Bahrain, who now has sort of an official tie with the emperor of Persia. Give the letter to the king of Bahrain. And the king of Bahrain will give the letter now to whom? To the Khosrows, the emperor of Persia. And that's what Abdullah ibn Hudhayfa does. And he waits news now from whom? The king of Bahrain, who goes all the way, sits now with the Khosrows here. And the Khosrows, he just takes the letter of the Rasul when he sees it, and he just rips up the letter of the Prophet, rips it up, and just throws down. From the import of the letter, Aslim Taslim. And all of them, Aslim Taslim. Become Muslim and you're safe. That's the import of the letter. And you become Muslim and you're safe. That's the import of the letter. I know that the letter of the Rasul sallallahu it's written to every Ja'ir, every Jabbar fil ard. And remember the Prophet sallallahu every tyrant upon the face of the earth. That letter is written. It's still being written by the Rasul sallallahu sent forth sallallahu. I remember the Rasul sallallahu said that a man yawm al-qiyamah will be raised in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a tyrant, even though he was just a man of his own house. So let's not think about tyranny as those at the level of statehood. Remember, quote unquote, when masculinity goes wrong, tyranny ensues. Tyranny ensues when masculinity goes wrong. And the letter still being written by the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that letter, aslim, taslim, submit and you'll be safe. Mafhum mukhalafa, you don't submit, you're in big trouble. Big trouble. We ask Allah Ta'ala for safety and security. Subhanallah. For many of us, today has been a sad day, isn't it? Again, we've witnessed the temporality of the dunya in and of itself. Sure. And you've gazed into grave, you've placed a body inside of a grave, you've covered over that body inside of a grave, you sat beside that grave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the ummah of the Asr, and the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the ummah of the Asr. We are the people of the Asr, the final hour, in quote with the narrative of humanity. And we all sat around the grave at the Asr in and of itself. And every single one of us, quote unquote, we experienced the sun setting thereafter, isn't it? And the narrative of the human being, quote unquote, being drawn to a radical conclusion. If we don't take ibar, if we don't take quote unquote admonition to lessons from moments like that, we will never take admonition to lessons in terms of life. This life, fleeting, it's short. Now you here, now you ain't. You ain't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will summon you, Jalla Jalala wa ta'ala azamatu. And what gifts will you be bearing for the Lord, Jalla Jalala wa ta'ala azamatu? There's only quote unquote one gift Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts. It's a gift that has the ribbon of the love of Muhammad tied upon it. Yeah, that's it. They're the only deeds Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept. Any other deed rejected by the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. You being in hellfire, look at the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la ubali. Look at the word, they're frightening words. These are in the blazing inferno of hell, and it affects me not. Another way of translating it, I couldn't care less. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. We ask Allah ta'ala for tawfiq, isn't it? That the letter of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has reached us. And like Ashama, we've taken the letter of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-ayn wa ra's, ya Rasulullah, sam'an wa ta'atan, ya Rasulullah. Al-ayn wa ra's, that we show, quote, the ultimate respect to the letters of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as the Rasul for the entire world. Jalla jalala wa ta'ala azamatu. Remember the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in terms of quote unquote, that sort of three-watered land, it's sure. Either it's going north to where we all are, and we hope, quote, we don't follow in the footsteps of Caesar. All roads lead to Rome. Unfortunately, sure, we hope we ain't following, quote unquote, the steps of Caesar. That's what we hope. Remember, rules have exceptions. And the rule of Europe is damned. Yani. That's the rule of Europe. The rule, overwhelming rule. It's not going to go well for Europe at the end of yani, these days up until the end of time. It doesn't go well for Europe. Yani. Hakada the narrative of the Rasul. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But that they the rule, yani. The rule. That's the rule of thumb. But mashallah ta'ala, we pray we're the exception, and to be the exception, I think we better start thinking about how we can become exceptional. We can be exceptionally good, exceedingly good for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And there will be people who embrace, the darker ages, no doubt are approaching the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, especially upon the continent. Don't think, quote unquote, what we see inside of France is such of like a quote unquote, it's a flash in the pan. That will take a grip of the continent of Europe until Islam is not only clearly an enemy, quote unquote, of Europeanism, but as the Rasul sallallahu said inside of saying Nu'aym ibn Hamad, the Shaykh of al-Bukhari, that Rome, Europe will kill every last Arabi. There will be a genocide that will be in far greater proportion than what we saw Europe do, quote unquote, to our brothers from Banu Israel, in far greater proportion. That being forecast by the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, prophesied by the one that Najashi says, the truthful, the one in whom truth is vested, sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. We better get intelligent about this affair, yani. Remember, every one of us will die. It's just in what state. That's the only negotiation of life. The negotiation is not whether you will die or not, yani. That's not the negotiation. The negotiation is in what state will you die. Yes. And every single moment in life is part of that negotiation. Every moment. You're negotiating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about that final moment. Shaqiyan aw Sa'id. We ask Allah ta'ala to render us from the Su'ada. Subhanallah. Abdullah bin Hudhayfa al-Sahmi sent to the Khazraj, Emperor of Persia, may God curse him. He tears up the letter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. King of Bahrain tells Abdullah bin Hudhayfa, he tore up your letter. No Sahaba ain't getting all amp about that. So Abdullah Sahaba head all the way back to Medina. Mazzaqa risalaka ya Rasulullah. He just ripped up your letter, O Messenger of God. As Rasul says, Mazzaqa risalati. Allah yumazziq mulqahu tamziqa. Look, bil ikhbar. Allah will rip his kingdom to shreds. In another riwayah, da'a. Look at the Rasul. Da'a. Allah mazziq mulqahu. Oh Allah mazziq mulqahu tamziqa. Kulla mumazzaq. Oh Allah rip it all to shreds. Tear it up, the kingdom. The Prophet are making dua sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To make matters even worse for this man in language. Why is he saying Allah Ta'ala cares him? When the religion is not a religion of case. The man now is going to write now to a person called Badan, who's a Persian, who's like a sort of like a viceroy of his inside of the Yemen. And now he commands like Badan inside of the Yemen to send 2 men to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, assassins. That one day, they're in the Hijaz, they send 2 assassins. Where are they from? Assassins, shuf. Go there and deal with the issue, yani. And so when they arrive at the Prophet ﷺ, these assassins in front of the Rasul ﷺ, they arrive at the Rasul ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Rabbi, my Lord, see my Lord there? My Lord has killed your Lord. Tonight, yeah. He said, right, your Lord be killed, yeah. What the Rasul ﷺ is saying is that now Caesar himself has been assassinated, sure. Look, he sends 2 people to assassinate the Rasul ﷺ, and on the very night they arrive at the Rasul ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends assassins to the Khasraj himself. From where did the assassin come? His own son. Sure, it's his own son who kills him. Yeah. It's his own son who kills him. And so the Rasul just sends them packing. Sure, it's haba. And you better go and tell the man who sent you, Badan, who was the viceroy, tell Badan what's wise for him that he embraces this religion. You see, and that's how we can save face, yeah. You can save face. Those who don't, like, the family of Khazraj, the day came when they were begging in the streets of Medina, like tramps. Yeah. That's the day came. So Allah Ta'ala took them from where He took them, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala sent them down. Why rejection of the Rasul You're begging inside the streets of Medina to Munawwar. The day came, in the age of Umar ibn Khattab, rahimahullah ta'ala. Shuf, when they return back to Badan now receives news that the Khosrows has been killed by his own son. And so Badan then himself, he enters into the fold of Islam. But Persia becomes a different story that the narrative of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum will comment upon. Tayyib, inshallah ta'ala. And if amongst the others is Sayyidina Hatim Abi Balti'a, radiallahu anhu wardah, who sent to the Muqawqis. Hatim Abi Balti'a, great, mashallah ta'ala. Well, he commits one of the greatest crimes you can ever do, isn't it? Treason against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hatim Abi Balti'a, subhanallah. That the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we fast forward now a year later after this is Fath Mecca. And the Rasul, for one of the first times, the Rasul is instructing the Sahaba that we march upon Mecca till Mukarram. Everybody prepare. We're going to march upon Mecca. This becomes Fath Mecca, liberation of Mecca, and it has its qissa. It has its story, although the Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala, did not bring the issue of Mecca inside of his will. And so now, he sends now a woman to Mecca till Mukarramah, informing Quraysh that the Rasul is preparing an army to march upon Mecca. And that they high treason now. That's treason. Sure. And punishable by death in any canon, any law will punish treason by death. And so he said, this is the same Hatim Abi Balti'a. So he sends a letter. Look at the Rasul. The Rasul knows, but often when Jibreel descends, what that means. And the Rasul is showing now leaders often the means, quote unquote, to seek out those people who work and actively against the state that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in place is part of the duties of Khilafat, the duties of those who have the machines of state at their disposal. And so now Jibreel descends to the Rasul, informs the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As we'll come to, inshallah ta'ala, we'll get there, we'll see his scribes, his executioners. The Rasul has people who execute on his behalf. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And from the executioners of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. And Sayyidina Zubair, Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Maslama, Sayyidina Asim bin Thabit, Ibn Abil Aqla, Sayyidina Miqdad. See Sayyidina Ali, 1, Sayyidina Zubair, 2, see Sayyidina Miqdad, there, 3, the Rasul unleashes them. The riwayah just Sayyidina Ali and Miqdad, another riwayah with Sayyidina Zubair. The Rasul unleashes them 3 companions who were executioners on behalf of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Where to? To the desert. Who for? A woman. A woman, yani. And you think the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would shuf, the mind would say, maybe the Rasul maybe send a companion, desert's dangerous, or he's going to send a woman to approach a woman. The Rasul, none of that, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Rasul now, a message, yani, because it's grave what is occurred. The Rasul sends 3 of the most dangerous of all of the companions of the Messenger of God. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, Sayyidina Zubair ibn Awam, Sayyidina Miqdad ibn Amr, Miqdad ibn Aswad radiallahu anhum. And so now they head to the desert. There's a woman in the desert. She's carrying a letter all the way to Quraysh. Get the woman, get the letter, bring her back to me. The Rasul sallallahu. They head off to the desert, the exact place the Rasul said they find the woman. They found it, the exact place. Remember the woman on the move, yani. You get the point. So with the Rasul said the exact place, that's exact knowledge. With the woman on the move, they find the exact place the Prophet sallallahu said we're going to find her. Ali ibn Abi Talib, who's the Emir placed in charge, you have a letter, give me the letter. I'm being polite right now. I'm being polite right now, give me that letter, Yani. Ali ibn Abi Talib. A woman says, what letter? The Prophet said, you got a letter that you're carrying from Medina, from Hatim Abi Balti'a, all the way to Quraysh to warn Quraysh. Because I have no letter, none whatsoever. So the Prophet saying, Ali ibn Abi Talib says, do I have permission to search? He said, of course you have permission to search. Search, you're not going to find anything. And so Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib and Sayyidina Miqdad, they say, Shari, they don't find anything, they don't find anything. Women said, see, you have nothing. Look, I can these mawaqif of the Sahaba. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib said, all I know is the Rasul said, you got a letter. That's all I know. And if the Rasul said, you got a letter, you got a letter. That's all I know as well. There's one choice you have. Ali, you give me the letter or I will strip you naked. I'm going to strip you naked in the midst of the desert here. Strip you naked. Give me the letter. Woman had weaved it into her hair, yani. Weaved it. She'd weaved the letter right in there, yani. Weaved it in. That's a new meaning of weaves now, isn't it? SubhanAllah. And so she brings out the letter, gets it, Ali takes the letter, takes the woman all the way back to Medina to Munawwara. The Rasul said to Hatim Abi Balti'a, ما حملك على هذا? Why do you do this? Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab present. Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab ain't even don't even want to wait for an excuse, Shadi. Umar ibn Khattab said, Ya Rasulullah, give me permission one time to strike the head of this munafiq. Let me just sever his head. Umar ibn Khattab rahimahullah ta'ala is saying to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet now addresses Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab. Ya Umar, ma yudrik. What do you know? لعل الله نظر إلى أهل البدر. Maybe Allah Ta'ala has gazed upon the people of Badr and said, If'alu ma shittum. Do whatever you want, you're forgiven. Do whatever you want, you're in Badrite, special the people of Badr. Do whatever you want, you're forgiven. And he made his excuses and he was forgiven and he becomes a messenger of the messenger of Allah to the Muqawqis. The Muqawqis, who's the head of the Coptic church. Okay, Coptic church, and he was considered to be the provincial governor of Rome, of Caesar, inside of Egypt, inside of Masr. Yeah, in Alexandria, he was in Alexandria, and it's in Alexandria where Sayyidina Hajj Abi Balti'a now meets up with what? With the Muqawqis in and of himself. The Muqawqis at first, he's saying, you know, the messenger of God, the messenger of God. If he was the messenger of God, then where was God when his people threw him out of Mecca to Mukarramah? Why didn't God come to his assistance when his own people exiled him, ostracized him, and ultimately throw him out of Mecca al-Mukarramah if he's the messenger of God? So he says, and where was God when what? When Jesus, and he was now being accused, and thereby his people conspired against him with the Romans in order to what? To crucify him. But Allah, so where was God then in all of that? And he's addressing their belief. And then the Muqawqis says, Hakim min ind al-Hakim. So the wise man who came from a wise man. You're good, got you there. And so now he entertains Hatim al-Balti'a, and so thereby, mashallah, tabarakallah, and the Muqawqis reads the letter of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, and has a lot of adab with the Rasul. And he said, the adab that the Muqawqis himself has with the Prophet ﷺ is the very reason the Copts are still today in Egypt. They still exist today in Egypt and protected in Egypt. And they're protected people upon the what? Upon the command of the Rasul ﷺ, and he returns back to the Muqawqis here. Again, although he does not become Muslim, but he definitely has adab with the Prophet ﷺ. And he warmed to Islam, but we don't know he became Muslim. Gifted the Prophet ﷺ, that's Maria Qubtiya, spoken about, the mother of Ibrahim. Shireen, who's the sister of Maria Qubtiya, who becomes the mother of several of the children, 4 or 5 of the children. I'm saying Hassan bin Thabit. Shireen is with Hassan bin Thabit. A grey mule called Duldul. Some say also the donkey Ya'fur. They come from the Muqawqis. Likewise, according to some, 1,000 dinars he sends to the Prophet ﷺ, 20 silk garments, other things. Not why he even sends the Rasul a doctor to Medina to Munawwara. So, but he didn't get that one right. Yeah, he certainly didn't get that right. The Rasul accepted everything except the doctor. Doctor, you can go back. Go back. And the doctor saying, what do you mean go back? We sent to you. Everybody needs a doctor. Rasul said, not us. We don't need doctors. Imagine that, not a single doctor in Medina. NHS don't exist in Medina to Munawwara. Go. And he says, no, but I've had to stay. I've been sent for a reason by the Muqawqis. Rasul said, khalas, Medina, mashallah, marhaba bikum. And he remains in Medina for 1 entire year. He doesn't have one patient. Because the Sahaba are patient in illness. He doesn't have one single patient. Then he comes back to the Rasul complaining. And then the Prophet and he asked the Rasul, what's the secret of you people? Diet. It's a diet. We're the people, we eat and we drink, but never to excess. Never. All health and sickness is tied to the stomach. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Okay, inshallah ta'ala, if you excuse us in terms of reading, we just have to read, inshallah ta'ala. Amr ibn As, radiallahu anhu warda, was sent to Ja'far and Abd, the 2 sons of Julanda, the kings of Oman. They both became Muslim and left the way open for Amr to take the zakah and to establish rule amongst them. They embraced this remained placed until the Prophet ﷺ died. Asaf, although they don't go to the Rasul ﷺ, and so now they're not going to be considered Sahaba because they don't go to the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay, but tabi'een, Muslims, mashallah, tabarakallah, in positions of leadership. Salid bin Amr al-Amiri, radiallahu anhu, who was sent to Hawdha ibn Ali, who was the chief of Yamama, the Najd now. So this is now the Rasul dispatching now his messengers to the chiefs, the leaders of the Arabs themselves, the main leaders of the Arabs. And so he honored him and sent a response to the Prophet ﷺ, how excellent and beautiful is that which you call unto. Okay, well, okay. And I'm the spokesman, the official poet of my people. When someone says that, ego is involved now, isn't it? That's ego. I'm the spokesman, the official poet of my people. Well, and? Come on. I mean, the Rasul sent you a letter for a reason, yani. You got the point? So all of that the Rasul understands. Why are you repeating that? Designate a part of the affair to me. Shuf now, power. He wants power from the Prophet ﷺ. And that day, Yamama, that's the Najd now. I mean, like quote unquote, his cohort Musaylim al-Kadhab. When the Rasul Musaylim al-Kadhab comes to Medina, the Rasul stands up Musaylim al-Kadhab. The Rasul got a stick in his hand. He's got a little ujun, a stick in his hand. And the Rasul is with him, saying Thabit ibn Shammas. It's with Thabit ibn Shammas. And the Rasul, then Musaylim al-Kadhab is saying to the Rasul, he said, for me to believe in you, I want the affair after you. Meaning when you die, prophecies in my hands and I have ruler, I'm your successor. He's saying to the Rasul grant that to me, I grant you quote unquote my allegiance. And the Rasul says, you see this stick? I wouldn't even give you this stick. I would not even give you this stick in my hand. And that stick precious, isn't it? That stick worth more than Musaylim al-Kadhab 1,000 times over. Yani. As much as human life is, mashallah ta'ala, with Allah, but that stick of the Rasul, I would not give you the stick. And the Rasul said, how Thabit? He said, Thabit, yeah, Thabit, you kallimu. Rasul Mesha, Rasul Garafia, Rasul said, Thabit's going to speak to you. Rasul didn't even deliver the message to him, left the messenger to deliver the message. وهو عن قريب. It's not like he's all the way in Yamama. عن قريب الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم, right in front of the Rasul. The Rasul speaks to him through intermediary. Sallallahu alayhi wa akada Yamama. I'm the spokesman and official poet of my people and designate a part of the affair to me. The Messenger of Allah Ta'ala refused one time at the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-mulk lillah. Dominion is for God. يؤتي ملك من يشاء وينزع الملك ممن يشاء ويعز من يشاء ويذل من يشاء بيد الخير إنه على كل شيء قدير. Allah Ta'ala tells us that. Allah, the mulk is for Allah Ta'ala, and He gives dominion power to whomever He pleases. But also He strips power from whoever He pleases. Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala. It's funny watching these people of power, isn't it? But for khair, not like you want to laugh on the misfortune of others, but sometimes it's comical, isn't it? Like that whole Trump thing, if we're not really interested in politics, but it is comical, you see people like trying to hold on for their life, yani, won't concede, this is my baby. Your baby, what? Yeah, Allah strip it from you one time. Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala, tilka al-ayyam nudawiluha bayna an-nas. These are the days we alternate between people. The Habaib radhiyallahu anhum warḍahum, they say, mulk, power, that ain't fit for our dogs, yani. Right? That Habaib say, power, that ain't fit for our beasts. We wouldn't even get to our animals, yani. To our animals, we wouldn't give power to, yani. This is Imam to the Akhirah, yani. Zero interest in the rule of the world, in the trappings of the world, in power and control and dominion inside of the world. That there for dogs, beasts, or lesser than. As the Imam Ibn Dunya, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the treatise of how there are many, an animal that walks upon four that is better than those that walk upon two legs. Subhanallah. Some people, they shame Banu Adam, isn't it? Shame, man. Shame. They shame Banu Adam. Subhanallah. Some people refused, and how they never became Muslim. Shuja' ibn Wahab al-Asadi radiallahu anhu was sent to al-Harith ibn Abi Shamr al-Ghassani, the king of Bulqa in the Levant, in the Sham. He threw down the letter and said, I'll march unto him. Look at the power there. You're going to march unto the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Just on behalf of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, come then. Come then, march. No, however, he was prevented from doing so by Caesar. Caesar was telling him, like, don't be stupid. Like, do not be stupid. You better calm down, innit? I know after anyone who knows sort of combat, a lot of people men, you know, being sure. I remember, you know, sometimes ghetto, some people saying like in ghetto politics, they said, you know, come on, you know, people, they just chat a lot, innit? You know, people like, men will chat a lot, oh, come on, and all. They're going to do nothing there, they're not going to do anything whatsoever. And so I get that, you know what I mean? And he's probably thinking like, you know, Caesar, like you see like in these sort of, you know, UFC and jiu-jitsu or boxing, and they're trying to fight you, and they know everyone's going to hold them back, innit? You know, and you know everyone's going to wait to the ring, Gary. You know you're not going to get a clean lick up on him. Oh, no, man holding you back and you're kicking out like McGregor with Khabib there. Come on. Then when you got in the ring, it's only business. It's only business. like from the lion to the pussycat, Gary. Heck of the man. This is not what you're seeing, Gary. Heck of what he's trying to say. Oh, I'm going to march onto him. Caesar holding it back. No, don't. He's like, yeah, marching onto nobody. Come then. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi Subhanallah. Al-Muhajir ibn Abi Umayyah al-Makhzumi radiyallahu anhu was sent to Al-Harith al-Himyari in the Yemen, Taha's people. Al-Ala ibn al-Hadrami, mashallah, Imam Hadramaut, radiyallahu anhu, the great of the companions of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, was sent to Al-Mundhir ibn Sawa, the king of Bahrain. He became Muslim, mashallah ta'ala. The Arabs by and well know best. The only problem are those on the edge. That's what Allah said. The edge is, subhanallah, where Allah, these kings of Saudi Arabia decided to place their religious capital, their political capital, their economic capital in the exact places that the Rasul kissed, in the exact places that the Sahaba al-Anhum slaughtered, quote-unquote, Banu Hanifa. Exact places. And you somehow render that, quote-unquote, the capital, your economic capital, your political capital, and your religious capital. Sure, yani. Send Mu'adh ibn Jabal together with Abu Musa al-Ash'ari to the Yemen, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. Remember, both of them originally Yemeni. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Ansari, his heritage is Yemeni. Musa al-Ash'ari, Yemen, Zabid, from the great land of Zabid in the coastal, in western Yemen. The overwhelming majority of the people of Yemen, the leaders became Muslim without any military engagement. It's one of the blessings of the people of Yemen. Without battle, without war. I remember Yemen, people of war. It's not like without war, like they don't know how to battle, they know how to fight, yani. Yemen knows how to fight, yani. Sure. If you study Islamic history, they say wherever Yemen was, victory was. They say it's a secret, even in the age of the Khulafa, that the Yemenis are one of the secret backbones, quote unquote, of the victory of the Ummah in all of the wars of the Ummah in and of itself. So they know how to battle, but aqal. The people of Yemen have come on to you. Yemen, subhanallah. Yemen, a trifid, subhanallah. Yemen, a trifid. Taha reckons he was born there, but I don't know. Taha straight from Scouser, you know what I mean? Straight from Scouser. And he comes and all of that stuff, isn't it? So and he comes. But Yemen, subhanallah. Atakum ahlul Yemen, hum raqul qulub al-yad al-afida. And the people of Yemen have come into Araqal Qulub. They have really delicate hearts, sensitive hearts. Aliyan al-Afida. They have really soft souls. The Prophet said, Fiqh Yamanin. The people of understanding. Al-Imanu Yamanin. The people of faith. Al-Hikmah Yamaniyah. People of wisdom. It's all Yemeni. The Rasul wa ana Yamani. And I'm Yemeni. The Rasul says, blessed the people of Yemen. MashaAllah ta'ala. Blessed, yani. That's the most blessed people of the Rasul, the people of Yemen. Yani. Pronounce judgment on the people of Yemen. There's no ahadith upon people like there are of the people of Yemen. And often if people say, what about the Quraysh? When the Rasul says, Ana Yemeni, it tells you Quraysh are Yemeni. Quraysh, like Mecca from greater Yemen. Yani. Sound way to understand it. Anything to the right of the Kaaba, Yemen. As the Yemen means the Yameen of Kaaba, the right of the Kaaba. Huh? 22, inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to read, inshallah ta'ala, because these are more so biographies, inshallah ta'ala. And so when we get the book, inshallah ta'ala, people can read the biographies that we place of the varying companions, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. It's called Kutabuhu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, qala radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, ونفعنا به وبكم في الدارين آمين. من كتب له عليه الصلاة والسلام الخلفاء الأربعة وعامر بن فهيرة وعبد الله بن الأرقم وأبي بن كعب وثابت بن قيس بن شماس وخالد بن سعيد وعبد الله بن الربيع وزيد بن ثابت معاوية وشرحبيل بن حسن رضي الله تعالى عنهم أجمعين. And so he says, from amongst those who wrote on behalf of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these are scribes of Wahi. They used to write revelation on behalf of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam whenever Allah Ta'ala revealed to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Rasul does not write whatsoever. He's the oral prophet, and Nabiyul Ummi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the oral prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who does not write. And so when Allah Ta'ala reveals to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam commands those who have the capacity to write sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are overwhelmingly good. Overwhelmingly good. From amongst the Sahaba, although there is a narrative for certain people like Abdullah ibn Khatal as an example, like Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh. There are a few people who, nasallahu salam al-afiyah, they're people of Ridda, apostasy, who apostated after being believers and scribes of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. Allah Ta'ala send them, Jalla Jalaluhu wa Ta'ala azamatuh, send them to a place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala couldn't care less if he places them subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nasallallahu salam. Abdullah ibn Khatal, they're foul. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Sami'un Alim. How many times do you say Sami'un Alim inside of the Quran? When the Prophet says Sami'un Alim, he'd write, yeah. He would flip it the other way. I'd flip it the other way, but the Prophet says Sami'un Alim. If he says Alimun Sami', how can he's going to write? Allah Ta'ala Ghafur al-Rahim. He writes Rahimun Ghafur. Then he goes, he said, when Muhammad dictated Quran to me, I wrote whatever I wanted to write. Then in the riwayat, actually, when he runs off, that he starts claiming the Quran's his. He's the author of the Quran. His name is Abdullah bin Khatal. Abdullah bin Khatal. Foul, yeah, man, foul, yeah, Abdullah bin Khatal. So if he becomes Muslim, Abdullah bin Khatal becomes Muslim, as you said, he's drawn close. He learns Quran, becomes a scribe of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam got the fitna of knowledge and also the fitna of teaching. The Prophet sends him now to a Hayy of the Arabs, a group of the Arabs, to teach them religion, teach them the Quran. And so when he goes there, you see power gone to his head. And so he's telling them that, look, I've long journey, I'm tired and all of that stuff. So just get my food ready. I'm going to sleep when I wake up. Oh, subhanAllah, when I wake up, subhanAllah. One of the Sheikh named Tareem, Sheikh Umar Hussain, Allah Ta'ala bless him, Sheikh Umar Hussain. Sheikh Umar Hussain was mentioned once in the Fakir. He says, the Arabs, khidmah, Arab ain't do khidmah. He said, you tell the Arab to do your khidmah, he'll slap you in the face. Yeah. Arab will slap you in the face. Yeah. I can't say Umar ibn Zayd. Allah, the great faqih of Ba'ab Tareem, mashallah ta'ala. I can't, he said, make my food when I wake up, the food better be ready. Yeah. When he wakes up, the food ain't ready. Yeah. They ain't even ready, they ain't even begun to cook it. So he kills them. He goes on a killing spree. Yeah. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Yani? Women best be careful, innit? Come on, where's your dinner? It's not even in the oven. Shh. You hear, yani? Subhanallah. Them people like Abdullah bin Khatal. That's the tyranny, innit? Like a man kick off. The man gonna kick off. Woman ain't cook them no food, yani. Innit? Brice, you like that? The wife's back there. She can vouch whether you like that or not. Brice, the French are supposed to be good in the kitchen. What are we saying, Brice? You're thinking of an answer, innit? Thinking of an answer. I hope you're good in the kitchen, isn't it? Don't be sure. Don't be telling the wife to cook there and the dinner ain't there ready, and then you're going to start kicking off and shuf kalam. Taha, no, you're laughing at Taha. You're in a shuf. As we said, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, fil matbakh. The Rasul is in the kitchen. Kana fi khidmati ahlih. Don't tell me, no, that's a modern man. No, that's a prophetic man. You mean a modern man? We ain't interested in no modern man business. We ain't interested in prophetic man. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was in the servitude of his family. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Shuf sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Shuf. And so now the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, man got off. Man got off to Mecca. You got to face the Rasul with that? Man got off to Mecca. Gets to Mecca, the apostate inside of Mecca. Never mind apostate out of Mecca. You start now blocking Quraysh that you're the author of the Quran. And Quraysh ain't buying that, yani. They ain't gonna buy that. Within a year or so, yeah, they khalas all Quraysh Muslim. So obviously they didn't buy your kalam, Quraysh, yeah, you wrote the Quran. Well, he was reciting that before there was you, yani. So how is that you the author of the Quran? I gotta look at that. Then he goes and opens up a nightclub, and we call it a nightclub. He opens up a nightclub called the Hanut. Opens up a nightclub, serving the drink and all that type of stuff, getting people a bit tipsy. Then he has, quote unquote, he has two women, he has two slave girls. And then look, this is what he does write. He writes insults against the messenger of God. And gets these two women, these slave girls there, to sing insults against the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Look at Allah Ta'ala. وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ. Look at the words of Allah Ta'ala. The earth in its vastness becomes constricted for them. That even can be like a sign, like a mental illness, like depression, where like it starts all closing in upon you, isn't it? Like the earth in its vastness becomes claustrophobic for you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever finds Abdullah ibn Khatal, فَقْتُلُوهُ, execute him. وَلَوْ مُعَلَّقًا بِأَسْتَارِ الْكَعْبَةِ, even if he's holding on to the drapes of the Kaaba, execute him. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says. Guess where they find him? Holding on to the drapes of the Kaaba. As if the Rasul is saying, by the way, even if, hypothetically speaking, he's holding on to the drapes of the Kaaba, akada Fat Mecca. These are the few people who were killed Fat Mecca, yani. Sure. Sahaba get this. Abdullah ibn Khatab, what? Man holding on to the drapes of the Kaaba. Sahaba, even Sahaba, like, Sahaba will leave. Yani they go to the Rasul, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rasulullah, wajadna ibn Khatal. We found ibn Khatal, mu'allaq bi astar al-Kaaba. The Rasul said, فَقْتُلُوا. And in tradition, mashallah, tradition, ajib, tradition, they have to kill ibn Khatal. That when the Sahaba reached the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Rasul, his mighfar, his helmet, the Rasul is taken off his mighfar. Mighfar in the Arabic language means the instrument for forgiveness. It's like so symbolic. As they get to the Rasul is putting down the mighfar. There's no forgiveness at this point now. He's putting down the instrument for forgiveness. Hakada the hadith. Ya Rasul ibn al-Khatal mu'allaq bi astar al-Kaaba. He's holding on to astar al-Kaaba. Had Ibn al-Khatal been holding on to astar al-Kaaba al-Nabawiyya al-Muhammadiyya, and he fled to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Shay akhar. That would be a different story altogether. Everybody who fled to the Rasul, everybody, even Hind, who tried to swallow the liver of Hamza, radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa anha, she reached al-Kaaba al-Nabawiyya al-Muhammadiyya, and she was forgiven. And my man, quote unquote, rock hard heart, reached rock hard Kaaba. Hakada. Ya Allah, what can you do for stone that circumambulate stone? Ya Allah, what can you do for stone that clings onto stone? Faqtulu. Execute him. Sahaba descended. Sure, they don't even know. The ikhtilaf over 11 people. Like who killed Ibn Khatal? Like 11 different opinions about who killed him, because the Sahaba were all rushing for that good deed. نسأل الله السلامة والعافية. هكذا يعني in life, this deen is a deen of mercy. This deen, mashallah, is a deen of forgiveness. This deen is a deen of clemency, mashallah, tabarakallah. But in that, there are certain people, they're better 6 feet beneath the ground. Yeah. They're better buried beneath the earth. Yeah. Hakada. Earth becomes a better place. No, how can they say, the moderns are going to tell us, and the moderns tell us, sure, like, this bias, the moderns tell us that if you eradicated insects from the face of the earth, life would be untenable. That life could not be sustained upon the face of the earth in the absence of insects. Just the insects. Got rid of everyone. Then they tell us if you got rid of the human being, life would flourish. That's what they tell us. And they're talking about empirically, scientifically, like man, subhanallah. And it's not like man in general, but it's like Allah Ta'ala, a'immatul kufr. They're the people, because human beings are essentially sheep. The problem is who's the shepherd. It's who's the shepherd, Who's the one? You get the point? With the pipe there, what's that one? With all the rats, remember that's the piper and all the rats. It's all the rats that are following him, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. From amongst those that wrote on behalf of the Messenger of Allah, the 4 caliphs, Sayyidina Amir ibn Fuhayra, as you learned in the narrative of Suraq ibn Malik, Abdullah ibn Arqam, Ubay ibn Ka'ab, Thabit ibn Qais ibn Shamas, the great orator, Khalid ibn Sa'id, Hamdullah ibn al-Rabi', Zayd ibn Thabit, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, Shirahbil ibn Hasana, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. All these scribes for the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And often, 4 caliphs, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Uthman, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een. And here we looked at before, the executioners of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, Sayyidina Zubayr ibn Awam, Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Maslama, Sayyidina Asim ibn Thabit, Sayyidina Abi Aqla, Sayyidina Miqdad ibn Aswad, radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een. All of them used to execute in the presence of the Messenger of God and on behalf of the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. Remember these conversations, they relate to statehood. Remember, it's important. Don't think this is just sort of like an ordinary common occasion, but these are the affairs of the state. When you hear issues of executions, these are people now, quote unquote, who are executed as a judgment that is pronounced on behalf of the state, i.e. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, quote unquote, the theocracy of Islam, if you like that term or not. We ask Allah ta'ala for tawfiq, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us of those who execute religion on his behalf. Not execute human beings, but execute the religion on his behalf. Jalla Jalaluhu wa ta'ala ta'adamatuh. Do you have any questions, inshaAllah ta'ala? Any questions? Any questions, inshaAllah ta'ala? Aywa. Yani, Allahu a'lam. And what was the question was about Sayyidina Umar's son, what was the crime that he committed? Yani, inshallah ta'ala, it doesn't necessarily matter what was the crime that he committed. I know the crime that he committed, and I know what the tradition, but I don't think it matters. I don't think it's necessarily part of the narrative. The narrative is that Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, and he'd been found guilty inside the court, and that he had to be punished for it. Because again, this is adab. This is adab. You're dealing with the khulafa, the children of the khulafa, and what have you. Any questions, inshallah ta'ala? Any questions? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please, can you advise the best way to be in the service of the Prophet in these times and these lands? Allah ta'ala, and I think we've made mention of that, but the religion, obviously learning the religion, embracing the religion, whether it relates to that which is personally obligatory upon you or obligatory upon your community, or it's for the betterment of the community in terms of the kifayat, in terms of the sunnah al-kifayat, and all of those, the law will clarify what is the best way to save the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam in these lands and in these places, inshallah ta'ala. You mentioned that it is more grave for insults to be targeted to the Prophet and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How then should we engage with those Muslims who have belittled the Prophet in their works, which are still being published? And again, remember, we're the people of the law. It's important, we're the people of the law. We're not people who quote unquote take the law into their own hands. What we mean by taking the law into our own hands, we recognize authority, and we recognize religious authority, and we recognize political authority. And we mentioned the tradition inside the Sahih al-Bukhari, and ra'a minkum munkara fayughayyirhu biyadihi. Okay, whichever one of you see an evil like what's being discussed here, then فَيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ, that you change it with your hands. لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ, and if you can't, then with your tongue. لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ, and if you can't, then with your heart. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ, and that there is the weakest of all faith. Okay, a basic standard understanding of the tradition, and there are many understandings. There's always complexity with the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, look, sure, the basic understanding of the hadith is that with the hand, that's for leaders of the state. Remember, Allah subhanahu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasula wa ulil amri minkum. Obey God unconditionally, and obey the Rasul unconditionally sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those who are in authority over you. Obedience to them is conditional upon their obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam unconditionally. And in that, there's tafsir, there's details. Don't take that carte blanche, but there's details. But it gives you a broad understanding of the tradition, of the verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for those who have authority over you, al-ulama wal-umara, it's religious leaders and political leaders, leaders of polity. Okay? So, who changed with the hand? Political leaders. Who changed with the tongue? Religious leaders. What then about us? The heart. The heart, the heart, the heart, the heart, the heart. Okay? وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفَ الْإِيمَانِ, that's the weakest. Why is it the weakest of all faith? From one perspective of the hadith. Because you ain't a scholar, or neither do you have the machines of state at your disposal. And so, يعني مقامك حيث أقامك. Your position is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed you. And so, we should be careful of punching above our weight, because it gets you in trouble in the dunya as well as in the akhirah. To punch above your weight. And so now, in the question here, if people insult the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's a canon. The law can deal with that. Shari'atul mutahhara. Our problem, which maybe sort of refers to the tradition, to the question before, is that what? Well, in the question before by Shahzad, Shahzad's question is, can you advise the best way to be in service of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in these times and lands? And no doubt, we have personal duties, but those personal duties have to have goals, milestones as well. Sure. Transformation of society is a goal, an objective, an aim of every single believer. Transformation of society. We're not here to maintain a status quo. We cannot be happy living in lands in which, quote, we're governed by laws other than that which the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with. Like someone, are you happy with that? You have a serious problem with faith. Serious problem with faith. That you're happy. And then you say, like, then why don't you read Sirah? How then do you relate to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have, sure, they offered them status quo inside the Mecca to Mukarramah. In Mecca. Like, you don't understand that Mecca. And the Rasul gonna leave Mecca. Sure, people wouldn't even consider leaving England. People wouldn't even consider leaving Liverpool. People wouldn't even consider leaving Breck Road. Like, bro, born and raised. They wouldn't even consider it, yani. And the Rasul left Mecca. Why? We're not a people of the status quo. Al-Islam ya'lu wa la yu'la alayh. Islam is superior, can never be inferior, ever. Cannot. We can, and we are when we settle for the inferior, when we settle for the status quo. Okay? But in the meantime, whilst we're waking away, we're law-abiding citizens. You hear that? We don't take the law into our own hands. We don't perform acts in a society that will bring about greater problems and difficulties. 1, for yourself. 2, for your family. 3, for the believers in and of themselves. That ain't Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. The reality is, it's Amr bil Munkar wa Nahy anil Ma'ruf. It's the opposite, yani. Remember, it's a difficult chapter, the chapter of commanding the good and forbidding the evil. It's not easy, yani. It's not a simple chapter inside of the law, yani. Because the Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar is about social transformation, how we transform society. Okay? So here, Allah Ta'ala bless here. Is it more, you mentioned that it's more great, the insult to the target of the Prophet ﷺ. How then should we engage with those Muslims who have belittled Muslims, who belittled the Prophet ﷺ in their works, which are still being published? Yani, shuf, first, ad'af al-iman. Get the point? We've got to hate that in our heart. We've got to hate it, say this inside of our heart. Shuf, don't worry, yani, life temporal, yani. If they live like that and they die like that, shuf, they'll see what happens beyond the veil, yani. Get the point? If we can, with the people, if we can, especially in an age where we're all playing the role of ulama, we're all playing some type of role on social media and the social dilemma there. If we can, we can speak out with our tongues and ensure people are not guided to the books of such Muslims. Then if we can, I'm talking about our realm, with our hand, we can make sure our quote-unquote well-earned guinea, our pounds are not spent upon such books or such people or bookshops, quote-unquote, that stock such works. These type of, there are things we can do within our capacity to ensure that, quote-unquote, these people are not given a play, yani. And that day, we ought to be serious about that. It can't be like, oh, come on, it's only his opinion. It can't be like that. Allah Ta'ala bless you there, yani. Allah bless you, yani. These things we should take seriously, but we've got to be intelligent of how we do it in a way that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's got to be a certain, I know Allah is being pleased with the way I'm approaching this. But the least, ad'af al-iman. It's got to be in your heart. Look, sure, don't think that's, although the hadith, that's the weakest of faith, sure. Shall we flip the hadith in another way? The hadith can be understood the exact opposite. يعني من رأى منكم منكرا فيغير بيده. Whoever sees an evil, let them change it with their hands. So the ulama say now, we've got to look at change. So to physically change something, to repair the situation with your hands, that's one. وَلَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If they can't with their tongue, change it with your tongue.
Who's more powerful? The one who has to use their hands to physically change something, or they can change it by virtue of the word? The one with the word is far more powerful. Yeah. You can change a situation by speaking out against it without acting against it. You're far more powerful. Then, when if they can't, then with their heart, change with his heart. Who's more powerful now? The one who can change the situation without even speaking. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. No, it's an alif. ذَلِكَ أَضْعَافُ الْإِيمَانِ. How can the Imam say ذَلِكَ أَضْعَافُ الْإِيمَانِ? That is a multiplicity of faith. Their presence changes. Their presence changes. So let's not just see that, well, it's just in my heart, it's a sign of weakness. Yeah, but the more you contain it inside of your heart, allow it to be nurtured inside of your heart, al-hub lillah wa bughd lillah, love for Allah ta'ala and hatred for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more that capacity to hate inside of the heart changes that which is the object of your hate from without. We ask Allah ta'ala for tawfiq there. Wa alaikum assalam, can you kind of read the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did the janazah salah of the niggas. This was in absence of the body, not the physical death. You can also make the janazah prayer. And that day, the question is, can you clarify, please? The Prophet ﷺ did the janazah salah of the niggas. The Najashi radiallahu anhu, this was in absence of the body and not the physical janazah. If so, can we also make janazah prayer in absence also? No, you can't make janazah prayer in the absence of the body. Okay? But what you can do, according to the Shafi'is, is what's called salatul ghaib. So this here, the Shafi'i fuqaha consider this to be what's called salatul ghaib. It's called the absentee prayer. It's when somebody has passed away in a land other than the land in which you're in, and they've been buried. Now then the believers now can pray over in absentia. And it's called salatul ghaib. How can the Shafi'i fuqaha are upon? Other schools, like the Maliki school, they say you can't even do that. They say this, the Rasul khususiyah. It's an elect quality, it's a special quality of the Rasul. There's no qiyas upon it. So schools differ upon whether this becomes a legal precedent or not, okay? Was she the mother of Sayyidina Ibrahim radiallahu anhu? Yes, she was. Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Could you please shine some light upon Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nawfal, who was in relation to Sayyidina Khadija al-Kubra? Or did she have a cousin named Waraq ibn Nawfal? You look at the word Nawfal. Nawfal is a common name amongst the Arabs. Nawfal. And so Waraq ibn Nawfal ibn Asad. So Nawfal is the father of Waraq ibn Asad. Okay? And that Nawfal there is the brother of Khuwaylid. And Khuwaylid is the father of Khadija. That there, to make it easier for you, that Banu Asad is the clan of Asad, which is one of the 9 clans of Quraysh. Okay? Zayd bin Amr bin Nawfal, completely different. And Nawfal, completely different. And Nawfal is from the clan of Adi. Okay? And the grandfather of Zayd, of the forefathers of Umar ibn Khattab as well. Completely different, completely different. Okay? What has the great scholar say about the island England? Will it sink or stay as Muslims? Ameen. We used to say Ameen. Shuf England, Allah Ta'ala alam. Remember, Allah Ta'ala only wishes good for the believers, isn't it? Boris Johnson there, coming out of the European Union, maybe a good thing after all, isn't it? Allah alam. You know Allah Ta'ala, the Rasul of the Bukhari, Ajibani Amr al-Mu'min. Rasul Ajibani. You know what the Rasul Ajibani mean? I'm like bewildered, eh? It's fascinating, the affair of the believer. Amruhu kulluhu khair. It's all good. This affair is all good. Even when we perceive the affair to be wrong, it always turns out good for the believer. For the believer. For the believer. So, mashallah ta'ala. Inshallah ta'ala. Wa alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We spoke a few times about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam not having or not taking a Khalil. Is this because he has taken Allah Ta'ala as his Khalil? Yes. Also, must the Khalil, a relationship be reciprocal? It's understood that way. And a Khalil, it's understood that way. In the Arabic language, there wasn't fa'il. Of the meaning there wasn't fa'il, is a fa'il wal maf'ul. Fa'il wal maf'ul. And the word fa'il, like when you say amir. An amir wal ma'mur. He's one who commands and he's one who's commanded. So the Khalil, likewise, Allah wasn't fa'il, same thing. It's a type of reciprocity in terms of that intimacy. Okay. Also, must the Khalil be reciprocal? If not, he wants the if not part. Can and how may one take Rasulullah as their Khalil? Afwan, you're too late for that. Yani, what tribe was Abu Dujana from? Abu Dujana Ansari radiallahu anhu warda. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray you all well. I mean, inshallah ta'ala. Could you clarify the points you mentioned earlier about the 3 stages that the Prophet ﷺ had inside of Mecca? We said 10 years. 10 years. He's a messenger in Mecca for 10 years. From the age of 43 to the age of 54, the Rasul is a messenger of Allah. And for 3 years prior, he was also a prophet. That's from the age of 40 to the age of 43. He's also a prophet, experientially, outwardly. And then the ulama, 2 years prior to that, 38 years of age, when solitude is made beloved to him, what was it? The ulama asked us, what was it? Someone to ask, what was the Rasul prior to Nubuwah, experientially, outwardly? What was he? They say wilaya. So 38 years of age, wilaya, yani, it's an issue of sainthood and sanctity. Okay? That's why, the great Imam, students of the Madrasa study, Imam Bahrak, in his greater work, Bahrak, Hakada Imam Bahrak, Yutnib, yani, he wants to speak now about that period of time, why it's a period of wilaya, and why wilaya is a prerequisite for embracing Nubuwah. The only people who embrace Nubuwah, ala haddi, ala haqqi, are those who have the quote-unquote the station of wilaya. Their hearts are purified, cleansed, yani, cleansed, completely cleansed. Okay? Hakada. The question was, the Europeans will kill all Arabs. Does the hadith specifically say Arabs or Muslims? It says Arabs. The hadith says Arabs, don't say Muslims. The hadith of Nu'man ibn Hamad. But then every Muslim and Arab in it. In the eye of a racist, shuf. And so don't think, you'll be like, I hate Arab. No, that ain't going to buy on that day, shuf. As far as they could say, Arab can be synonymous with Muslim. Allah Ta'ala alam. But that's, Allah Ta'ala is probably the way it should be perceived, You get the point? Both the hadith does literally say Arabs, it doesn't say Muslim.
Sheikh, you said that Sharia is ruling over this country, so we shouldn't feel happy about this. We should only, our heart should feel happy only if Sharia is ruling in the country. I have sometimes a bit mixed feelings and skepticism when I hear some brothers or sisters who are lawyers. I don't know, I don't want to judge, but sometimes I feel a bit of a dichotomy between being a Muslim of Sharia and choosing to study law in a Western university. So yeah, I want to know if this feeling I have is right or wrong. I would like to know if it's...
No, the Faqih would say it's a right feeling you have and a very healthy feeling that you have. It's healthy, and
what are they doing there?
Say again?
What are they doing in this field?
Allah alam. The Faqih, I think we mentioned the point before, No, alhamdulillah, you're in Liverpool. You came to Liverpool. So Liverpool, like the land of the Beatles, just like let it be, just let it be. And I think we mentioned saying, I'm not saying let it be like, shuf, but ishtagaltu nafsi bi nafsi. Ishtagaltu nafsi bi nafsi, I just busy myself with myself. In terms of what people are doing, if you can ultimately be saying that what people are doing are wrong, fabi qalbi, then in our heart, and that's what I'm saying, it's a healthy thing inside of your heart, that you don't find that to be right, healthy. But then what can you do about it? Possibly in our age, not much. Remember the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think the hadith which helps govern the age in which we live in, with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that a man yad'u li nafsihi, the Prophet said a man will make dua for himself, that he'll make dua for his people, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer the dua for him and for his people. Then the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yati ala nas zaman, there will come upon humanity a time where a man will make dua for himself and he'll make dua for his people, and show you that always mamduh, regardless. You make dua for yourself, you make dua for your people. You make dua for yourself, you make dua for the Muslims. You make dua for yourself, you make dua for the non-Muslims. How can a healthy heart, But the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah Ta'ala will only answer the dua for himself. There will come a time, and the beauty of that, which helps us, is that when you raise your hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mahma kan, mahma, So long as don't worry, you're not going to reach the sword min maghribiha. You're not going to reach that point, the cosmic point. But until the point that you die, that your dua can always be answered. Always and always, doesn't matter what age you live in. Allah will always answer your dua. For who? For you. So now there has to be a healthy preoccupation with the cleansing and the purification of the self, that you become a true representative and a viceroy of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Illa, except there's an age that comes, and no doubt we approach that age where you can't do nothing about anybody else. And you can't do nothing about anybody else. Okay? So all you've got there is the power, but it doesn't mean you don't make dua for them. Sure, because the Rasul said he will make dua for himself and for others, but Allah only answers the dua for him. So you still must make dua for others, but al-baqi ala Allah. Utrukuhum ila rabbahum. Leave them to their Lord. Jalla jalaluhu wa ta'ala. You get the point again? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, British, the French way, the voyeur, the voyeur there. Often we're voyeurs in it. The awliya, he's so righteous. She's the kutub. Oh, where's the Abdal? At the voyeur there. I mean, really the voyeur. So, self. I do think like Abu Bakr was like, Ya Rasulullah, where are the awliya? Ya Rasulullah, how can I? You think Abu Bakr was like, talk about that, Abu Bakr too busy trying to be a wali. Abu Bakr, too busy trying to be soldier of the Rasul, too busy. They're too busy trying to ensure that they're included in the khitab of Allah Ta'ala that speaks about those great and those high and those elevated people. Too busy. Like forget people, leave people to their Lord Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Honestly, we really leave people to their Lord. I mean, subhanAllah, and for we sat in the presence of greats, we do not hear them speaking about other people. Like this one doing that, and don't hear them. And actually, I'm talking about even in the more generic sense, they don't. Like over 95% of the irshad, focused, completely focused, focused upon us being the best we can be. Like my teacher Habib Ahmad, I've heard Habib Ahmad speak, That's why, sometimes when the Fakir can say things, the mind can go, I can go back to a majlis of Habib Ahmad, but that majlis of Habib Ahmad, that was like private, Not like Habib. I know one majlis of Habib Ahmad was speaking about the topic, and Habib Ahmad, there's only two people in that room with Habib Ahmad, and the Fakir, one of them, And Habib Ahmad was still speaking under his voice, speaking low, and Habib Ahmad was still sort of like, you sure? And I'm just showing you, like, their way is not, you know what I mean? We have too much potential to rectify our own situation. And the more we begin to focus upon outside of ourselves, the more we compromise that potential. You get the point? So the healthy, we can see the wrong, isn't it? In the heart. Just make sure we don't become prey to that wrong. You with it? And how often do you speak about something, you speak out against something, and you actually become the manifestation of that which you speak out against, isn't it? How often? Qaida of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah bless, but people, subhanallah, people. Like, the point there, like somebody wants to go and study law, Western canon, and this, that, and the other. Look, we don't want to look at it in a negative way. Like, why are you studying that? A positive way. Where did the ulama of Sharia? Like you with all that intellect that you could go to and study Western law, and you could become a barrister and become a member of the bar, and all of those funny handshakes. And have you seen them? I've been there. Sure. One of my sisters in the bar. I said, no, I need you there. And I'm getting my butt. And I'm like, Lord have mercy. Sure. You go to some type of Masonic temple there. Well, Lord have mercy. Go where? You want me to go where? There? My sister and all of that. I don't know. About stopping the bastions of kufr there. Wickedness and evil. But the point being, why? It's not like we've got we've got an overabundance of scholars of the law, of Shafi'i law, or Maliki law, or Hanafi law, or, we've got a lot to do as a ummah. Why? It doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense, And you're leaving a massive vacuum. Some of our best intellects are out there perfecting kufr, yani. Our best intellects, yani. Shuf. And come home, yani, come home. ET phone home, innit? Subhanallah, yani. Inshallah ta'ala. Allah ta'ala, my soul is fascinated by the Greeks. Yeah, I don't know. I can't wait to share the stories you've shared on Caesar and others. MashaAllah, Allah yubarak. Please signpost me to where I can let him read more about the Muslim perspective. Allah ta'ala, and that's maybe ties to the previous question. Like, where is the Muslim perspective? I mean, it's certainly in our religion, certainly in our language, the Arabic language, but it's clearly not being quote unquote transposed into a language that ordinarily is accessible by the people of the land in which we're in, yani. Like, we have a lot of work to do, yani, a lot of work, unbelievable amount of work, like we have to do inside of our age. And Allahu Alam, what will happen to the UK compared to France? Allahu Ta'ala Alam. Like, remember the French, remember, and if you understand the history of Europe, the French and English are like the closest of cousins, yani. Remember, in England it's French, yani. It's an extension of France. You get it? Harold got shot in the eye. If you remember your history in it. Harold. He got an arrow in the eye. William was the conqueror. Wasn't he? You don't even know your history there. I'm not going to you have it. The Battle of Hastings, 1066. You forgot that, didn't you, son? He's thinking about 1966 England winning the World Cup. No, I'm talking about 1066, the Battle of Hastings, son. The French won the war. They won the war, Yanni. The French won the war. You get the point? Your first cousins, Yanni. Your first cousins. You get the point? So the question I'm saying is, what will happen to the UK compared to France? Being in Long Island. And our prayer should be France like England. Such as their first cousins, Yanni. But what's the prayer for England then? And Allah Ta'ala, you should have in your heart that maybe, quote unquote, the destiny of England rests upon you. Maybe. Maybe it's upon you. Andre, you little afro there. What you reckon, Andre? Could rest upon you, isn't it? Maybe all of this affair revolves around someone called Andre. Maybe. Isn't it? You ever thought about that? You ever thought about that, Andre? Sure. And people who desire greatness have to think about that. Maybe. I expose myself to the winds that are stirred from the presence of the divine, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma ja'alna mafatih lil khair. I mean, that has to come from a confident heart. Confidence in Allah. Allahumma, make us keys. Not miftah al khair. Mafatih. Make us keys. You know, mafatih in the Arabic language, muntaha al jumu'ah. It's the furthest plural, can no longer be pluralized. Make us the keys. Good, innit? Maghaliq. للشر, boat, منتهى الجموع. خلاص, boat and all evil. How can we go to ask Allah Ta'ala, isn't it? Subhanallah. Allah Ta'ala bless you. Subhanallah. Yani. How can we be sure witness the Prophet Sallallahu in the dream world? If you see the Rasul Sallallahu in the dream world, you've seen him. That's how you're sure. And khalas, the Imam's dominant opinion upon that, regardless of what form he appears in, it's the Prophet Sallallahu. Who is Hind bint Utbah? Hind bint Utbah, she's the wife of Abu Sufyan, and she's also the daughter of Utbah bin Rabi'ah. Okay? But she becomes Muslim at Mecca, after Fat Mecca. Hind bint Utbah, radiallahu ta'ala anha wa ardaha. Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My question is, sometimes it's very hard to say radiallahu an when I remember Hind, or anyone who became Muslim after quoting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with charm. I feel uneasy in my heart. Is it best not to think about them or avoid mentioning them? Allahu A'lam. I think, often what makes it, and it is like, that's a very real question, and a very real question. But the faqir would say often, again, it relates to the issue before, when we sort of focus on ourselves, and then when we see our own deficiency, and it'd be hooked up with, in terms of the rights of the Prophet ﷺ, now it makes everything far easier. You get the point? When somebody enters into the fold of the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, intaha, full stop. And then especially if they're born into that age. And especially when you actually think about it, to a degree, if you're an enemy of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it takes a great soul to overcome that enmity and to become a lover of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That there is a great and a brave soul. Brave, a very courageous soul, yani. You with it? Like if you look at a person like you hate in life, I mean, you have people you don't even hate. Sure, you may even be a sibling, and you don't get on with that sibling, And no matter what they do to you, you find it difficult to overcome your dislike for them or your adversity for them, isn't it? It can become very, very difficult. That's tough. But these were people who hated the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They fought against the Rasul. They plotted to kill the Rasul and quote unquote succeeded, quote unquote, in killing many of the people around the Prophet. But through him, his mercy, his clemency, they were able to overcome that and flip to the opposite end of the extreme. You know the point? And so, and often what helps us, and again, embrace that, is because where are we, yani? When we look at ourselves, we see that we're deficient, yani. That Allah, we could reach our maximum potential in this age. We could convert the entire earth, and we are not a toenail on the feet of the Sahaba. You see, like we know that, yani, we know that. And so that day should help. He's speaking about Sahaba, mashallah, tabarakallah, radiyallahu ta'ala anha wa ardaha. And but the question is a very real question. No, so the Fakir, you know, Ibn Hisham in his Qatar Nada, one of his works on grammar, Ibn Hisham, you know, he's trying to give a grammatical point, and you think like, sure, like why? But he gives it like an Arabian proverb there. That's I'm just trying to validate what you're saying there, but you know, the feeling. So he gives an Arabian proverb there. He's trying to teach in Arabic language, ni'ma wa bitsa, ahkam ni'ma wa bitsa, and how beautiful, how wretched. So he gives an example of bitsa marratul hind. How wretched a woman is hind. Yani. And so the Fakir first time, I like, what do you mean? How wretched a woman is in there? Like why hind? Why would you use the name hind? Yani? You get the point? And I'm not speaking about the Imam here, but I remember it's what's being mentioned here. The first time the Fakir heard that, I know my mind went to a very specific hind, yani, because of what we know about Sirah and what have you. But at the end of the equation, the Hind became a great woman, yani. And no doubt, you know, I mean, it can be difficult. That's a healthy heart. It can be difficult, isn't it? It can be difficult. But you have to overcome that. You know, you see that with saying Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, rahimahullah ta'ala. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq with Ka'b ibn Zuhair, when Ka'b ibn Zuhair in front of the Rasul forgives him after Fath Mecca, and Ka'b ibn Zuhair, there he says to Abu Bakr, Anshid, sing. Recite a song, recite poetry for us. Time to celebrate. And then Abu Bakr, he says, he quotes the line of Ka'b ibn Zuhair when he insulted the Prophet ﷺ. And what do you say? Look, yani, here, look, the Rasul can forgive. Yani. That's his very nature. We find it difficult. And I'm just being honest here. We just echo Abu Bakr, I'm just part of him. We find it difficult, yani. And even if we forgive, we find it difficult to forget, yani. When you insulted the Rasul, that's a real heart, yani. But now, when we project that, subhanAllah, look, you know, people can speak about Hind and Rabi, project it onto Ka'b ibn Zuhair, project it onto Abu Sufyan. Oh, sure. Let's go first. Project it onto Umar ibn Khattab. Umar was enemy, yani. But these were courageous hearts. Umar Bab. Medina to Shujaa is the gateway to the city of courage, and a lot of those who were enemies of the Rasul ﷺ, the least you could say about them, they were courageous, yani, to admit their wrong and then to go to war against their wrong. Like some of them, look, Abu Sufyan, as an example, you know, someone asked a question the other day about Abu Sufyan, and he said, Abu Sufyan, is that the husband of Hind? Abu Sufyan, no. So the Abu Sufyan we mentioned was Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith ibn Abdul Muttalib. So Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith Abdul Muttalib, like he sided with Abu Lahab. Like he was an enemy of the Rasul, enemy of the Prophet. It's the Rasul's own cousin. And prior to prophecy, experiential prophecy, they were close. Yani. And now the Rasul declares prophecy and Abu Lahab declares enmity, he sides with more so with Abu Lahab. His name was Abu Sufyan. Comes to Fath Mecca, the Rasul starts approaching Mecca, Fath Mecca. But Abu Sufyan now realizes the errors of his way. So he comes unto the Prophet ﷺ with one of his sons. And so he asks the Prophet to forgive him. The Prophet, I am sure. Look, Subhan the Rasul, no. And look, it's not the Rasul's not going to forgive him. The Rasul is now trying to emphasize the error of his ways. Because the Rasul is going to forgive. But often the Rasul is showing you forgiveness don't necessarily come easy. And you think you're going to say, I'm sorry, and then you're forgiven? No, let's see if you're truly sorry. So he's begging the Rasul, and begging the Rasul to forgive. The Rasul said, no, you're not going to be forgiven. So now, and the Rasul not only not going to forgive it, he ain't entering into Islam. Because he wants to enter Islam. If the Rasul has that, no, you ain't, no. Rasul sallallahu. So he says to the Prophet sallallahu, look, if you don't forgive me, you see look, the son here, see my young son here, we're going to wander the desert hatta namut ju'an, until we die out of hunger. That we're going to wander. Look how grave it was. And again, he's realized the error of his way. And that's got to be courageous. If you do something really wrong to a person, go and apologize to them. You see how hard it is for you to sit in front of them and apologize. Like your nafs is taking a beating, yani. A beating. It's taking a whooping, yani, your nafs, yani, when you try to apologize to somebody. And he's in front of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sure. This is like 21 years of enmity. 2 decades of going against the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and now he's apologizing for the Rasul. When he says we're going to die ju'an, then the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam then khalas, embraces him, mashallah, tabarakallah. That Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith, when we got to Hunayn, Rabbi Hunayn is only like a few weeks after this. He's of those who stands beside the Rasul when people are fleeing. When the army, the 12,000 stronger or different, that Abu Sufyan is only a few weeks old as a Muslim. There he is beside the Prophet, not fleeing, holding the beast of the Rasul with his uncle as well, who's Abbas, trying to contain the Rasul, who's trying to charge Hawazin by himself. A shahid, what's our point we want? They said from that moment he became Muslim, he never raised his eyes to the Prophet. He said if he came and the Rasul came into the presence, out of shame, he would try to avoid the Rasul. Like all of those years in which he showed enmity to the Rasul weighty upon him. But you will not read a single biography of him say that ahsana islamahu, that he perfected his Islam thereafter. Radiallahu anhu warda. And so whilst the point is God, we get the point. It is, the point there, it's a real point. And anybody who sort of who engages the people around the Prophet and doesn't feel that one was against the Rasul, that one insulted the Rasul, that one killed Hamza, and that one. You don't feel that inside of your heart. Allahu A'lam what type of heart you have. You have to feel that. You're just being real. Now it's a sign the heart real now. But then, now in the same way they were courageous to overcome their enmity for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you must be courageous to overcome your enmity for them, isn't it? You have to. You don't understand on Yawm al-Qiyamah having a problem with Hind bint Utbah. Believe me. You don't understand Yawm al-Qiyamah having a problem with Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith. You don't. Abu Sufyan. You don't understand Yawm al-Qiyamah. I've got a problem with Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harb. We ask Allah Ta'ala for tawfiq, inshallah Ta'ala. Was Dhul Khuwaysara from the Najd, did he have any link to Musaylim al-Kadhab, any form of the Ummah? Not our dars, or excuse me. The companions, radiallahu anhum, were people of absolute certainty in their religion and decree, destiny ordained by Allah subhanahu wa most high. How can we achieve certainty and containment the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? As they did what we discussed the issue of certainty yesterday, worship, inshallah ta'ala, is the greatest way to secure certainty of the heart. Regarding the stages of development and maturity of the human being, and Montessori and Steiner mentioned 4 stages, 6, 7. It seemed to match Islamic understanding. Do we also have these 4 stages? And if so, could you describe the 4th stage? No, Allahu A'lam, I don't think that we have necessarily the 4 stages. But in general, there could be an agreement, as we mentioned, traditions earlier on in the raising of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 0 to 7. You could speak about 0 to 5. You could speak about 0 to 2. You can have all of those. You get the point. The sensory motor stage. We understand that the stage you're speaking about there, but you can have 0 to 2. But for us, we're not looking at you get the extreme egocentrism or sensory motor stage. We're not speaking about them. We're looking at futum, to the age of weaning, isn't it? To the 5, to the age of the sealing of the character. To the 7, now you're moving beyond the world of play into the world of discipline, adab, and abstraction of thought. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and whether you attribute the tradition to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam or you embrace definitely that it's mawquf ala Ali ibn Abi Talib, it's a hadith saying Ali ibn Abi Talib, it's still our tradition. So Allah Ta'ala alam. and you say mashallah to Steiner, Rudolf Steiner, and mashallah to Mary Montessori and all of them, you say mashallah ta'ala, khadam, and if you excuse the term, khadam al-kufr. They saved kufr. They saved it. Mary Montessori, don't think she's a lover of Allah as Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You could write a work upon a hatred for Muslims. You could write a work upon that. Don't think she embraces Muslims and but al-hikmatu dalat al-mu'min, wisdom is the lost property of the believer. Okay? But the point what the faqih is saying, there are all these people khadam kufr. They've saved kufr. They've saved it, You with it? The question, again, our dear brother Baris, they make a mention there, is, well, man, who saved Islam, Like, which one of us saved the religion? Like, you're talking about education, how to raise a child. Sure. Go on to the greatest library, printed library in the world. How many books will you find up on tarbiyah of the child? Few and far between, like few. You're not getting one shelf, not one shelf of books. Okay, remember them? Remember we're not an ummah of books. Societies raise believers, but unfortunately, our societies have gone to pot. So being a point being, we can't look back at the Salaf and the Khalaf and them and say, look, shuf, they never left a legacy in this. No, their legacy was in their society. But somehow, quote unquote, imperialism and colonialism, quote unquote, and the sort of delusions of grandeur that Muslims can offer suffer from got in the way and severed us from that tradition. So now we're in an age where we ourselves have to, quote unquote, repiece the tradition again under the directive of those who are truly connected to the tradition and represent the tradition inside the age in which we live in. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When is the time for Muslims to leave the West and to Muslim lands? Allah Ta'ala, when the time is, but Allah, that's an individual thing. Maybe for some people the time is now. And there's certainly some people who should not be in these lands. Why? Look at them. Their deen has become so weak that they barely recognize themselves as Muslims now. They maybe say, I'm not even a Muslim no more. I'm sure you've met them. I've met them. Sat with them. You sat with many people trying to sort of explain to them the deen of Allah Ta'ala, that they're raised in Muslim houses and. Age. The fakir, like we sit here in halaqah, no assumptions out of a halaqah. We've met people who did, people who did the entire micro madrasa, beginning to end, and now don't believe that they're quote unquote they're Muslim anymore. You get the point? Let me go even further. We know people who sat in Tareem for years and don't believe they're Muslim anymore. Sat in Tareem in the presence of Habib Umar from the West. The age is the age. The age is the age. You get the point? And so no doubt, like when is it time to leave? Well, Allah, that's a decision individuals have to make, but be wise with that decision. Be wise with that decision. Any place that threatens your faith, threatens the faith of your children, I'm leaving on a jet plane. Got to get up and leave. Pack them bags, you gone. Shuf. Allah Ta'ala, if we have care for religion in and of itself. Some people say the companions fled from the battlefield at Uhud. How do we respond to such claim? Them people that even stood on the battlefield. People, they fled. You never stood there in the first place. Coward. Coward. Gave kalam, and how kind of the projection, in psychology, projection, isn't it? Perpetual set there. Cowards only try to see cowards. Hey, they were all cowards. No, you a coward. They are mirror. That's who they are. They fled. They fled from the battlefield of Uhud. They weren't even there, don't speak about the Sahaba. They fled as if you're their Lord and Savior. As if you're going to pronounce judgment upon the Sahaba. But let's go even further. As if the Sahaba care even what you're saying. The Sahaba like, oh God, people think that man thinks I'm a coward. I fled from the battlefield. That they're a khawarij. That's a khariji mind. Khariji mind. It's like whom? When the Khawarij, it comes to Abdullah bin Abbas, and says, Uthman ibn Affan fled the battlefield. He fled. Question, he fled. Uthman ibn Affan fled. Abdullah bin Abbas says, and Allah forgave him. What are you saying? What are you saying there? So if he did, Allah forgive him. What now are you saying? You get the point? If someone has dreams about the companions but not the Prophet ﷺ, can what do? Don't worry. How do you see the companions? You're nearly there. You're a tabi'i. Don't worry. You're a tabi'i. You're getting closer. Blessed, isn't it? Blessed to see the companions of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Blessed. Shuf, alhamdulillah. Yeah, it's unreal that there are billions of people who don't know of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and our Lord. And we are surrounded by many in these lands. How can we be introduced to the Prophet without pushing them away? It seems people are on the defensive when it comes to religion nowadays. I think it's a beautiful statement more so that you make there, inshallah ta'ala. Just be the best representative of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that you can be, inshallah ta'ala, in a way that people recognize as beautiful. Yeah. How do we contrast the humility and self-perceived lowliness that we ought to live by in our private lives, which could easily make one feel incredibly weak, and on the other hand, the izzah or the glory that we ought to aspire towards in pursuing the prophetic inheritance from the ulama in light of changing our society in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah Ta'ala alam, that's the Imams of Tarbiyah. That question, again, as we often say to students, that question there is often a question that speaks about how we can, outside of quote unquote the Hadana, the kindergarten of Ahlullah, of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And again, it's sort of it's not proper to think about religion outside of the context of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's people. And it's definitely a Western mindset. You know, like Tarnas has the passion of the Western mind. That definitely is the passion of a Western mind, that we perceive religion with a degree of independence, that we're somehow independent. But the reality, we are interdependent. Okay, and that rests upon Ahlullah, the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't say it outside of that, yeah. Okay? And so Aqad al-Fiqh would say there in that regard, can you advise if it is okay to write or compose prayers on the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for personal use, or should we stick to the prescribed salawat form? And Allah, it's beautiful if one can do that, but Allahu a'lam, that there is a science, and it's not an outward literary science. It's not a literary science that you can quote. You can do a master class on composing poetry, or a master class on, if the Muslims had one, on composing du'as, or a master class on, I think hakada, this is an inward reality. And so the Faqir would advise, once again, the previous question, connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's people. That's first and foremost. And then the second, in terms of ad'iyah, Quran, to the ad'iyah, Sunnah, to the ad'iyah, Ahlullah. You adopt the du'as of God in the Quran. You adopt the du'as of the Rasul. He left enough, yani. Because sometimes, what are we saying? Are we saying like we know the correct words to use that would have acceptance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over and above the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You there? I mean, what are the du'as inside of the Quran for? Yani? What are the du'as? The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam are teaching du'a. What the Rasul teaching Sayyidina Fatima Zahra? Du'as to make, teaching the du'a of Sayyidina Isa ibn Maryam, teaching Sayyidina Abbas and Abdul Muttalib, du'as to make, teaching Sayyidina Sa'ad Nabi Waqas, du'as to make, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is he teaching them? So that we by extension also can also be taught. How can we say, inshallah ta'ala? Allah protect. I mean, your comment on the issue of the prophetic man, as we said, with my intention, how would you advise for this issue to be studied in theory? Does it overlap with the Fatwa literature also? Yeah, issue of masculinity, no doubt, it overlaps with what the Fatwa literature. But we're saying that the greatest literature of Fatwa is looking at Ahlullah, the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the prophets, and those who adhere to the way of prophecy inside of the book of Allah ta'ala. And then obviously the life and time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's no greater demonstration of masculinity than in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his prophecy. Remember saying Aisha radiallahu anha wardaha, her word about the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kana rajula, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a man. That's what she said, he was a man. Saying Aisha, the great faqihah, the great mind, radiallahu ta'ala anha wardaha. Okay, type. How could we say that, inshallah ta'ala? But no doubt it's one of the most serious issues in our age. Serious issues, yani. It cannot never be underestimated or understated, yani. And it's an age of the absence of manhood, yani. The absence of manhood in and of itself. And it's only the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that knows truly how to be men, because that's from the legacies of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yani himself. Okay.
Was someone saying complete the? What was the story about Habib Umar? Was there an unfinished story on Habib Umar or something? Allahu A'lam about the story about Habib Umar. Allahu A'lam about that, the one which is not finished. Where did the battle against Banu Hanifa take? The battle of Banu Hanifa is in the Najd. Banu Hanifa is the Najd, Yamama, yani. Okay, it's these central places now you find in Riyadh and Qasim, the exact central Upper Arabia, where now, quote unquote, the capitals, and I would say, and I'm saying it, don't think it, the capitals of Kufr, yani, the capitals of Kufr, yani. Like how would you like how would you say Riyadh is the capital? Like how yani? Like you got Mecca, you got Medina. How would you even say that, yani? Like you know, like the audacity. Sure, that don't make sense, yani. Subhanallah. And regarding forgiveness, what are the ways one can forgive people easier and be able to ask people forgiveness if you have upset them? I'm going to start reading through now, inshallah ta'ala, because questions, inshallah ta'ala, on the topic, we've sort of gone off topic. Which companion stood firm with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at Uhud? Some say only Sayyidina Ali, and some say Sayyidina Abu Dujana, Sayyidina Zubayr. No, great number of companions stood firm with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam at Uhud. Great number, yani. I mean, 11 of the Ansar simply with a wall around the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Women stood firm with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's saying a Barakah stood firm with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that day. Saying Nusayba, like she got battle wounds from standing firm with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that day. Great number. Saying Talha, saying Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu warda. MashaAllah ta'ala. And knowing that Allah ta'ala can do anything, that the answers all du'as. The question is, know what to ask for. Clearly, the best behaviors of the Sahaba was to ask for peace and blessings upon Habibullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, even though whatever we ask for is insufficient for him. Yes, remember, salawat is not their dua. Salawat opens up their dua. You hear the salawat, because the salawat is in the beginning of your dua. Allahumma salli wa sallim. How can you start your dua? Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. How can you end your dua? And if your dua is long, the ulama say you put salawat in the middle. And so salawat, na'am, but what else are you asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And so after your salawat, what are the du'as of the book of Allah ta'ala? After salawat, what are the du'as inside of what the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, etc. It's saying that Muawiyah write down the revelation as a scribe. It's mentioned that he's a scribe of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I help out in weekly halakas. I'm trying to establish a foundation of teaching the beauty of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. How do you make it more easy for children to understand? Allah Ta'ala alam, through your character, through your behavior. Are you attributing the beauty of self to the beauty of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Children are more hardwired to the actions of the teacher than to the words of the teacher. They're more hardwired. To learn from the actions of their teacher and the caregiver, the parents, etc., than the words the parents or the caregiver or the teacher may give, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, who killed Musaylim al-Kadhab? We looked at that yesterday. Rayhan. MashaAllah ta'ala. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Rayhan, I'm just gonna read tonight. I'm gonna read all of your questions, and maybe we suffice there. Husn al-Khatim, inshallah ta'ala. With the spread of Islam was going on, khuruj, an obligation upon every capable man. How much of their lives was spent in khuruj? I've heard the Sahaba would spend 4 months every year in khuruj. Is there any truth to this? Yesterday you said the way to learn iman and faith is through ibadah. Is it true that all ibadah is rewarded more while in khuruj? Back to diet. What is the hashisha means in terms of food? This term is found in the hadith in Abu Dawood, and you gave the link. Jazakallah khair. Difference between Khalil and Rafiq in terms of intimate friend. In the age of Wilayah, 38 significant for the Mahdi. Jazakumullah khair, inshallah, muwafaqeen. We have 2 days left, inshallah, ta'ala, at least inside the Rabi al-Awwal. And as we said, we'll leave the khatam till the books arrive, and the students, especially those who've maintained, Allah ta'ala bless you, who've maintained the durus. Alhamdulillah, we're on, mashallah ta'ala, 28 days. Blessed, 28 days for those who've maintained 28 days. Studying about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. inshallah ta'ala, it has some type of weight upon our scales, inshallah ta'ala, and has some type of shahada, inshallah ta'ala, especially from the sayyahun, those angels, the Sahih Muslim, who Allah ta'ala has dispatched to gatherings just like this, and inshallah ta'ala, yahufuhum malaika, and inshallah those angels dispatched also to the houses of all of those who have zoomed in. Allah ta'ala bless you all, wa yahfadukum, inshallah protect you all, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.